Hello and welcome to the Outcast, the Not How to Train a Dragon podcast. We should really come up with a better intro for this. But anyway, I'm your host HC, and with me is
Wolf, and you could just say hello and welcome to the Outcast.
yeah, I could do that, but that's too easy. Anyway, we're continuing our Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle adventures um, with the second season of the 2012 series.
Mm-hmm.
So we've covered season one. If you haven't watched that, you can go ahead and check it out, and then come back here for season two. Which, as always, we start with a bit of a non-spoilery discussion. So, Wolf, you're the newcomer. What did you think about season two?
Well, this one definitely didn't get off to a good start. The
Hmm.
first two episodes, I definitely have words on, and they were not my favorites at all, especially as far as their humor is concerned. But after that, it started to improve a bit. Then we got another episode that where the humor just did not land with me at all, and then we got into a series of episodes that really just improved a lot, right?
Mhm.
Like it took this season a bit to get going, but once it did get going, it definitely improved a lot. And I would say overall, based on all of that, was definitely better and a good improvement over season one.
I would agree that I like season two more than one. And, there isn't an episode that I said, oh, I have a lot to say about this one regarding bad stuff, but overall, but,
I do.
uh, however, there are 26 episodes to this season.
Mm-hmm.
As we go over the list, I might remember something might that I might have some words to say on. We'll see as we go along. Actually, looking at the list, there's one I'm not a particular fan of, but yeah, we'll get to everything when we get to it. But a few notes, non-spoilery notes about season two in regards to the show itself is that one, like we said, that in every season there's like a parody show within a show that the turtles watch, which parodies a cartoon from that actually aired. In the first season, it was Space Heroes, which was a parody of Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
In this season, we have a show with too long of a title that I don't remember, which is a parody of Voltron.
Yeah, it's just
Uh,
it's rip off Voltron.
yeah, it's not Voltron. And what do you think about this show within a show concept?
It's more interesting than TMNT is.
Sure.
I mean, I like it. I think it's a nice little nod thing. It's funny in its own way, right? And it's a way for them to do foreshadowing with their own show. And they do turn it into a meh fourth wall joke later on in this season.
And this is something that actually it's kind of relevant in the previous season too, because this is how because Space Heroes was the show Leo like got the leadership idea from, but
Uh-huh.
in this one it does kind of reflect the theme of the season in a sense.
Well, I mean,
With
they definitely use it, in my opinion, quite a few times to what's happening in the show in the Voltron ripoff show tends to reflect back as to what's happening in the world of TMNT as well in that show, right? Like they use it as foreshadowing. Like if I'm not mistaken, spoilers. There's an episode where a
wait,
mind
so
control thing
let's
happens, right? I mean,
okay.
I'm not spoiling anything specific, right? That happens, and then we end up with the turtles, having to deal with illusion stuff, right? So it's kind of like
Yeah.
it foreshadows. They use it to, in a way, foreshadow stuff,
Okay.
which is neat, which I can get behind. And plus, I think it's fun in a way that hey, let's make fun of those old anime adaptations from Japanese to English, where the voice acting wasn't very good, where it was definitely cringy and silly and dumb, and it's just fun stuff.
So
Nothing
and
major, nothing to write home about, just fun.
yeah, and any other thing I want to point out regarding the season, in context of the entire series, I'll point those out when we get to the episodes where it's relevant.
Yeah.
Because so with that said, spoilers from this point on. If you haven't seen the second season of this show yet, this is your chance to close this podcast. Go watch it. Come back later. You still here? Good. Let's go over this. So episode 1, which aired like 3 days or something after the finale of the first season. By the
wow.
by, yeah,
That was quick.
and
They
not
had that handled already.
yeah, and maybe not 3 days, but it was a very short wait between the finale of season 1 and the opener of season 2. With that said, we have the mutation situation, which kind of kickstarts the main idea of this season, which is
I'm
that.
not fond of.
So you want to start with it?
For a season 2 starter, for me, this I felt was very poor. It didn't get me into the season. It didn't really attract me into anything. It's not until later on, until we get into. So I guess we should say, like, the storyline for kind of the first half of the season is finding mutagen canisters that had been lost in a fight between the turtles and the Krang, right?
Yes.
And so that's, I would say, the first half of our season.
Which the Krang are shipping that mutagen container to Shredder.
Yeah. They were shipping it to Shredder. They lost it, and now it's scattered all over the city, and ends up like our entire kind of storyline for the first half of the season is very much trying to find the mutagen canisters and dealing with people or animals that get mutated because of it, right? And
which by the way, this is something that in the Comic-Con panel leading up to this season, this is the main thing that I think it was Ciro Nieli, they had the showrunner, which says mutagen is all over the place in season 2. Like, this was their
I don't
their
like
goal
that.
was to push. Okay. Is there any specific reason? Or?
Because most of the time the way they use the mutagen is, hey, let's use this for really disgusting, terrible humor, and it's just not funny, and it's just, in my opinion, disgusting. Like, come on, we have this first season, first episode, start off with fart jokes. Yay. I'm going to say it now. If you're a writer and you have to come up and your go-to is a fart joke for comedy, there needs to be a thing that just where if a writer, especially a script writer for a show, movie, doesn't matter, is sitting in front of a screen and starts to write, there was a fart, there's a thing that just pops out of that screen and slaps them. It just slaps them, because fart jokes are not good. They never have been good. No one likes them. No one cares for them. Stop doing them, please.
Okay.
Rant over. I'm sorry. I don't care for fart jokes. It is the bottom of the barrel. It's not even the bottom. It's past the bottom of the barrel. You've broken the bottom of the barrel and dug further to find a fart joke. There are plenty of other good jokes you could do.
Okay, but fart jokes aside, and I agree with you that sometimes the show can. I will even say there's a Mikey joke in this episode, and to those who listen to the previous one and to the previous episode we did, that Michelangelo is my favorite of the turtles. And yeah, even he has some stuff that I didn't necessarily like in this season. Like, you could have cut it out.
I mean, there's just a lot of disgusting stuff that they do with the mutagen. Some of it's interesting, but some of it's just, let's do this, but make it terribly disgusting. But it's funny. Kids like this, right? No one likes this. Stop doing it, please.
Yeah.
Don't.
So, but gross out aside, kind of a bit of jumping ahead. I did like some of the mutations we got.
Some of them, they're interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll definitely get to some of those that I liked. It's not many.
But with that said, the first mutation we get is Kirby, April's father, being mutated into a vampire bat,
Hmm.
uh, which and then when they actually trap him, April actually realizes that the turtles are kind of responsible for the mutant dropping all over the city, and she kind of ditches them and cuts contact with
This is
them.
another thing I didn't like because it's kind of contrived, in my opinion. It's like she realizes later on that there's nothing they could have done to prevent this, right? Like accidents happen, and like they have a big thing like, hey, life happens, things happen sometimes, it's out of your control. And we'll get to this a little bit later on because they do get back together. Spoilers. But I mean, it just feels contrived in my opinion. Like, hey, we're doing the whole good guys breaking up routine thing again. Maybe maybe this might be the first time TMNT has done it in this, in the 2012 version, but it's not the first time
You
TMNT
know,
has done it, and it's not the first time any show has done it.
looking back, I don't remember necessarily a fight or April and the Turtles quote unquote breaking up. But there are thousands of iterations. Maybe I misremembering something. Maybe I missed
I'm
something.
sure there's stuff that's done this
And
before
like
with
they
TMNT.
probably they probably had they probably had their disagreements, but nothing's come to mind which is like on that caliber. But but
Fair
I
enough.
see your point. I see your point. I do kind of like it because it is something that that stretches upon a few episodes. It's not like this is something that happens in this episode and is resolved in the same episode. No, no, no. It takes a while for her to befriend them again, which maybe it could have taken longer, but take what you can get.
Fair enough. It's fair enough. It's not for me, but again, like I said, I felt this first episode was a bit lackluster, and it definitely didn't pull me into season two. And
The
as I went
one
on,
thing, yeah, as
again,
it went on,
as it went on, like I got more into it, and we definitely got into the later half of the season, which I think vastly improved because it focused on things that I think are way more interesting and way more important to the turtles and their story, right? Like I think it's more interesting on this side, on the later half side of things, which we'll get to. Mutagen not as fun or as enjoyable.
yeah.
And
With that,
oh, go
with
ahead.
that said, there is one joke that I did really enjoy in this episode,
Mm-hmm.
which is when the turtles are trying to set a trap to capture Kirby after he mutated, and they don't necessarily want to tell Splinter what happened. So Leonardo asks him, theoretically, let's say we want to capture a cat, and Splinter automatically goes into defense mode. Like what? I don't know. I found that funny. Now comes the part where you're probably saying that I'm easy to amuse and I'm an idiot, but yeah,
No,
I
no.
don't know.
Like there's definitely
I
some
found it
laughs I
funny.
got from this season, right? Like there's definitely some laughs I got from this season too.
Like I meant this episode in particular, not the entirety of the season, because
Sure, sure.
the but yeah, kind
That's
of
the that's the that's the that's the humor police coming for you to arrest you for your bad taste in humor.
yeah.
Boom.
Well,
Topical before the
it,
interruption.
it's not the first time that happened.
I
I
know.
can assure you.
Not the first time you've been
Well,
arrested by the humor police, I'm sure. I know.
mhm. Yeah, like I'm probably on some FBI list of jokes or something. I don't know. Anyway, so that was episode one. Moving on to episode two, Invasion of the Squirrelnoids,
It's aliens.
which
It's aliens, but with
yeah,
squirrels. It's aliens. It's aliens, but with squirrels, and I didn't like it. This goes back to that disgusting humor thing because you literally see a scene of a squirrel diving down a dude's mouth, and it's just, blah.
yeah, that part was I will say this. I'm not a fan of gross out in a lot of stuff, even shows
Neither
I
am I.
like that. Yeah, but I will say this. Nickelodeon is the last company I would have expected to greenlight something like this. Like somebody, you need to understand that someone who renews SpongeBob every year, looked at this and said, "Yeah, that's okay. That's okay to wear."
I'm not surprised it's Nickelodeon.
Hmm.
I kind of
Okay.
that feels very yeah. Nickelodeon would think this is funny because kids like gross out humor. They're the company that does the slime thing all the time.
Yeah, but here's the thing. You say gross out humor. I would argue that this bit of the squirrel going inside the man's mouth is not humor.
No, it's not. But I'm guaranteeing you, someone thought it was, and someone pitched it as such, because
If
kids like
if
this.
someone pitched this point as humor, I am very disturbed.
You
but
would be surprised. I do like
but
how,
okay,
though, this episode involves Splinter a lot more and we get to see a lot more of Splinter. That
yeah.
saved this episode. Otherwise, this would have been a really terrible episode. Splinter saves it. Simply put.
It is one of those episodes that it is filler, but it does serve to show just how the mutagen has gone out of control since the events of episode one.
There is a thing, though, that this episode kind of brought to my attention. This happens a lot in season one, and it
Okay.
happens a lot more in this season.
Mm-hmm.
Consistently, we have this monster of the week feel in some episodes, which is fine. I don't mind, but it
Well,
would be. Oh, go ahead.
it's kind of the type of show this is, though.
That's
The,
fair, but I mean, we do have moments where that's not the case. But it would be nice, right, if we didn't consistently do. They'll be back in the future because.
yeah,
Well,
actually, this honestly, sometimes I would agree with you. I would disagree on some, but in this case, I totally agree because spoilers, the Scrollonoids don't come back, if I recall.
they do. Like they show at the very end of this one that the Skrullonoids aren't done, so they'll definitely be back. They don't come back this season, admittedly, but
No, no, no. I mean in the entirety of the show, they are not back.
then why show that ending like that?
Yeah, that I agree with you. Like, don't tease that if you don't have any plans for it. That's what I want to say.
Because that's kind of my entire complaint, because they teased it like that, and I'm thinking, the Skrullonoids will be back. Great, and I care little because I would rather us be done with them. But no, they show them like that, and apparently we don't get them anymore. And it's like, well, what was the point in that then?
Mhm.
It's like, come on. But
Okay.
this definitely wasn't a favorite episode. This is probably the least favorite of my episodes, I think. No, no, that one probably there's another one that takes that spot, but this is definitely another weaker episode. But and again, like I said, like the first two episodes in this season definitely got off to a slow and less than favorable start from me personally, but it definitely picks up, especially
Okay.
with the next episode.
Follow the leader. I can tell you in one word why I really, really like this episode. Karai.
Yes.
People,
You
again,
involve
people who
Cry,
listen.
April, Splinter, and later another character who we'll get to in any episode, and it's immediately a lot better, in my opinion.
Yeah, like again, like I said in the again previous episode we did. I love Karai in this show,
Hmm.
and I like this that Shredder is heading to Japan to recruit more forces for his army, and so Karai is in charge of the Foot Clan. With
Hmm.
Karai in charge, she doesn't have a boss. When she doesn't have a boss, she can do whatever the hell she wants, and I am all out for that.
Hmm.
Uh, and on that note, I do like it kind of correlating to Leo, still having a hard time to have his brothers treat him as a leader.
Hmm.
Uh, but him being captured by Karai does kind of bring them to realize they do need him, and there is a reason why he's the leader. But
We
but
also.
again, I and
Oh, go
this
ahead.
this is also something I like with Karai, though, that in the previous season they did a lot of time gave that flirting idea that her and Leo might have a thing for each other to to as much of an extent as you can take it. But
Hmm.
But I did like that in this episode, after she saw the turtles attempting to kill Shredder, and after we find out that she is actually Splinter's daughter, um, there is something much more vengeful in the way she talks to Leo.
Mm-hmm.
There's something a lot more menacing about it
Yeah.
when now that she is in charge, and I do like it that you killed my father. Whatever like sort of liking I had for you at first, this is gone. I'm talking business with you now.
Well, no, they tried to kill her father or her assumed father,
Hmm.
not her
Well,
real
you know what I
father.
mean. Yeah.
If they killed him, then the show would be very different if Shredder was dead in season one.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying this from her perspective. So, but yeah, I did like that she's that she raised from an anti-hero to a villain. And again, Kelly Hu performance 10 out of 10.
Yeah, this is
She
really
had.
good. Like I liked the change in character. I liked the contrast between Leo trying to get his brothers to listen to him, and then you have the scene where Karai says they'll do whatever I say, no questions asked. I don't have to worry about them ever arguing with me or anything. It's kind of a good juxtaposition with how Leo's trying to get his brothers to listen to him. And it
Yeah.
kind of gives you this idea of like maybe it's okay if they argue with me, if they question me a little bit here and there. I do think like this was a good episode. Nothing wrong with that entirely. I do think we kind of we kind of go back to the Leo having troubles as leader well, and Raph having troubles with his anger well a lot in this season. Definitely more than the
Yeah.
previous. And it did start to wear a bit thin, in my opinion, right? But other than that, yeah, this was a great joke. I do want to make note of, and maybe you can help me out with this, the useful as a turtle in a trench coat joke. Was that a
Oh
reference
yeah.
to the noir thing?
I want.
The noir
No,
turtle
no. I
comic?
wanted. No, no, no. I wanted to mention this that in the '80s show, whenever the turtles went above ground, they would wear a trench coat and a fedora hat as a
Oh.
disguise. So it was a reference to that. That it was so ridiculous that they put a hat and a coat. Everybody buys that they're not turtles anymore.
Okay, neat.
Like
I
that's
thought that might have been a
uh,
reference, but I wasn't sure.
this was also this also happened in the first '90s movie, so it was
Ah,
a reference. So it was a reference to that. Uh,
neat.
but yeah, I like that reference, and also another thing I like about this episode a lot is the ending, where Splinter kept what he knows about Karai being his daughter away from the turtles.
Mm-hmm.
But when Leo approaches him, when he tells them, Karai says you killed her mother, and he tells them no, the truth is a lot more painful, and then he tells them Karai is my daughter, and that's where the episode ends. We don't see Leo's reaction. We don't we and the lead up to that happens in a much later episode.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if this is the right word, but artistically, I really like that choice.
Yeah, it
That
was well
we
done.
don't see a reaction, we don't see anything. You're just left to assume Leo knows now. You don't even know if the other turtles know about this by the end of this episode, and I really like that.
Mm-hmm.
It keeps you guessing.
Yeah, that was well done. Overall, a really good episode following up the previous two that did a lot better and did a lot more to get me interested in the season.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I
With
would
that,
say, for me, this is where the season really started at, personally.
okay. With that said, episode 4 is the return of your favorite character
Yeah.
from the previous season. Oh boy!
So,
Because the
starting off, before we get into him, this is the first episode where we see our Voltron ripoff show, which
yeah,
is, like I said, I liked it. It was a fun little side thing. It was neat. I liked how they used it to foreshadow stuff within the main show. A nice little thing. This is also our first intro into Casey Jones.
yeah. So this is the episode that introduces us to both Casey Jones and Irma, which is a version of Irma from the '80s cartoon, who was a co-worker of April's. Now she is her high school friend. So Casey Jones is voiced by Josh Peck, which the audience may know as Josh from Drake and Josh, and one of the possums in the Ice Age films. I can't tell which one, and I honestly don't care. But so yeah, he's voicing Casey Jones, which
He
was
does
a
good
big
here.
surprise. Yeah, like I was really surprised because I know him mostly from Drake and Josh, and
Mm.
I loved Drake and Josh back
Mm-hmm.
in the day. I still do to an extent. And he plays the nerdy idiot so well, and then all of a sudden you hear him as Casey Jones, who's supposed to be like this badass vigilante in a sense, and he actually does good. His voice
Yeah,
really fits.
he
I
does
like
really
it.
good for it.
And then we also have Irma, who's voiced by Kate Micucci, who people may know as the voice of Webby in the Coen
Yep.
DuckTales cartoon. And
I was
she was
surprised
also.
they did as much with this character as they did Irma's character. I kind of figured she'd just be, oh, one note side character, move on. Then we see her in a few more episodes, and then we go further on, and I'm like, is she going to be an important character? And then she changes out to be something else entirely, and we'll get to that one later. Spoilers.
Um, I will also say just now, just wait until season 4. That's all I'll say.
Oh boy. Um,
Um, Actually, I'm really curious about think about season 4 in two regards: Irma and the show within a show. But we'll get to
oh
that
boy.
bridge when we. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But anyway, yeah.
If we ever
So,
do.
so Irma, Kate Micucci, Webby in the Conductors cartoon. She was also in a few episodes of the Big Bang Theory. Yeah.
She does
So
good here.
and yeah, I like her. She's awesome. Um, so we meet Casey Jones, who April is tutoring, because obviously, and we already kind of get an implication that they're going for most of the versions where April and Casey are a thing.
We do end up getting the whole love triangle thing with Donnie, and there being a misunderstanding,
Yeah.
jealousy thing going on between the three of them. And it's,
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of wondering when we would do that, if we would do that, and we're going to do that. And it's,
If I may, this is a very very minor thing
mm,
that one of the reasons I really don't like life triangles is is because usually in this case the girl always ends up with a guy that I think deserves it the least, and there have been debates within the fandom of this show, whoever who they prefer who they prefer to able to be with. But I do want to credit that this doesn't really have a resolution. There's no definitive answer to that.
I
The
feel
show.
like it does, though. Looking at just this season alone, and we'll get to a moment later, but looking at just this season alone, I really feel like it does. you know,
Well,
I feel
what
like
I mean
they
is that
really
the
have their
show.
preference, and they're really
Yeah.
pushing towards what they want you to think.
Okay. Even if they do, the show doesn't really tell you straight on which
They do, though.
there's no the show doesn't tell it, so
I
I give them credit
disagree.
for.
I feel like
Okay.
they do. I feel like they really push you towards they want it to be Casey and April, especially looking at this season. They want it to be Casey and April that gets together. Whether they come out and specifically state this is what they want, they really push it in one direction because, I mean, come on. There's no way they're ever going to do it in a way where they're going to leave you thinking, oh, maybe, April and Donnie. No, they're not going to do that. They're never going to do that. No way Nickelodeon would allow that because the
Okay, maybe
implications and connotations there are just no. They would never do it.
okay,
Ever.
so maybe you're talking from the perspective of you saw only these two seasons. I'm talking from the perspective of I
Maybe
know
my
how
opinion will
everything
change. Maybe
website.
my opinion will
So
change as we get into
okay,
the later seasons. For now,
okay,
based on how this season
but you know
goes,
something, I prefer the implications to be that she's with Casey than Donnie personally, because
I mean, who
I don't need
wouldn't?
I don't need another Sonic 06 in my life. Thank you very much.
Moving on.
Moving on though, the episode itself. So yeah, we already talked about Casey. I like this version of Casey.
Yeah, he's good.
I like how they introduced him. But what did you think about the rest of the episode? Like I said, your favorite character is back.
Yeah,
And this is the
we should talk about Timothy, who was mutated before, ends up getting a hold of more mutagen and ends up becoming Mutagen Man.
yeah.
And Donnie makes him a voice box so he can kind of talk now as well. And he kind of just goes through the entire thing trying to capture April because she's his friend. So, you know.
Because he hears Donnie, talking about this to know, and
Yeah.
while he's walking.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Mutagen Man. This is the only episode in the entire series we see him as Mutagen Man as a villain, and honestly, kind of a waste. You can tell the character is not the episode is not about him.
No.
The point is not about him. He is just a quota to fill in this episode.
He's there to basically re-involve April and introduce Casey. I feel like he's there as the background villain to get Casey introduced, to involve Casey and April, and to kind of start the whole love triangle thing, I feel, with, and kind of to show Donnie's kind of a creep in this one.
Well, honestly, he had his creep moments in the previous.
Yeah, but I mean, definitely a creep overall in these past two seasons, somewhat when it comes to April. Little bit stalker-ish.
Mm-hmm.
With that said, Casey's not much better in this regard, and we'll get to that later. Like, I guess fair, they're teenagers, but also at the same time, no, not fair. That's no excuse. Like, this is, yeah. But overall, this wasn't a bad episode. This is definitely, like, it's Timothy, so I'm kind of meh on that character, but at the same time, I feel like this wasn't him being super annoying. This was, this was good. This was okay. He was there. He was a villain in the background. It was decently fun. Would like to point out, cops in New York City in the U.S. using nightsticks and not shooting first. Yeah.
Well,
that's not true at all.
I will say two things I don't want to say. I like how Casey is not new to the entire mutagen thing. He's aware that mutants are a thing. He's aware that shit went down in this city. I like that April doesn't have to like guide him into this,
because
he knows.
It did feel in the first season like most of New York was kind of like oblivious to the things that were going on around them until the Technodrome invaded. That's when they realized, oh shit, we're being invaded by aliens. Who knew all this crazy stuff was happening? But no, like, they do give it more of a feeling in this season where, like, yeah, the people of New York know that, the world knows that shit's going on, right? The world is aware that things are happening. They're not completely oblivious and blind to the fact that mutants are roaming around in the city streets and many other things, right? Like, there is, like, people are aware. They do show more of that. Like, we have way more news reports of, the newscasters reporting on, like, the strange happenings and things like that, right? Like, this is good. I like this a lot because this season improved in that regard a lot. Because, again, like I said, last season it did feel like people were just completely oblivious to things that were happening. Strange that we have a giant subway car driving down the street and no one says anything about that, but beggars can't be choosers, I suppose.
But another thing I want to bring attention to in this episode, and the last thing, I really like the action sequence in this, and the action is something I really like about the show. But I remember really liking the final fight in this one.
Oh yeah, like, there's, in my opinion, they definitely improved the animation a lot over first season.
Yeah, and the animation, camera walk movement is a lot more fluid. Like, just improvement overall, and good on it.
Yeah.
So, next episode, Mikey gets shell acne.
In my
notes. So you're probably going to say...
Would you like to hear my notes on this one?
So I just want to say that, Mikey is HC's favorite turtle. Of course he likes this episode. Well, honestly...
Would you like to hear my notes on this one?
I'm not a fan myself, so sure, go ahead.
In my notes, the only note I have for this episode is, why? Just why is this an episode?
Yeah, I think, I gave credit to this in the previous for the previous season, and I think what they try to do, is that they're teenagers, So they kind of trying to put that very relatable acne thing
Yeah.
into it, but I'm not sure if this was the way to do it.
No. It just it kind of it was just it's more gross out humor, and it really takes away from it a lot, I feel. And it just kind of doesn't belong with the turtles, in my opinion, right? Maybe that's just me, maybe that's just how I feel, but this one doesn't work. This is definitely one of those episodes that falls flat and hard. The only thing that's kind of neat and unique about this one is that Dog Pound gets mutated a second time.
Yeah, this is something. This is another thing I want to point out that he gets. Apparently, this happens because even because people did say that Dark Pound's design is not really threatening, and this was the show's way to fix it by making it a lot more werewolfy like. And
It looks it's a really great design in my opinion.
yeah, I like the design. And also, again, Clancy Brown's voice for it fits really well. And another thing, the name Razar is a reference to Toka and Razar from the second live action movie, who were the not like Toka and Razar were the not Bebop and Rocksteady of that movie. So
Neat.
this is and Razar was a wolf. So this is like their way to bring Razar into the show. So
Neat little thing.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like this is a good design change. I liked it. I wasn't, upset with the previous design. I thought it was neat at the very least. Like it did what it meant to do, and it was good. But I think this is like, if you ask me which one I prefer more, yeah, I would definitely probably go with this one a bit more because it's definitely a good improvement. Like
Yeah,
overall, it's a really good design change.
and another thing that kind of goes into the next episodes is Karai
Wow, we're not
getting
even gonna
back.
mention this episode.
Yeah, Karai. It's a teenage. It's a wacky teenager that deals with
we
acne.
we should say,
Like
right, like he deals with acne because he rubs mutagen on him. Mikey rubs one of Donatello's failed batches of retro mutagen to reverse the mutagen stuff effects.
yeah,
This is one of his failed batches, and Mikey decides to rub that stuff on him, and so basically, his mutagen cells are reacting badly. He's eventually going to just blow up as a giant zit.
that's
Bleh.
that's yeah, that's a thing though that I do want to say because Mikey is my favorite turtle. I've said it plenty of times. But the thing that people seem to forget is that while he is the comic relief and the goofball, Michelangelo is not necessarily an idiot. And this entire episode is kind of born out of an idiotic thing he does. And this bothers me.
Yeah, they do. I think it's supposed to be like, hey, it's a Mikey learning episode, and it's to show off, like, hey, Mikey's not a complete idiot because he does figure out exactly where, Bradford would take Stockman, right? Because the entire thing
yeah,
is like they need to get a thing from the old TCRI building ruins where Donatello can use what's it called? I'm going to end up saying it wrong because I'm going to end up remembering the centrifuge, right? That Mikey ends up calling the entire time the centrifuge. That's the mistake I didn't want to make, so I had to make sure I remembered it correctly. But yeah, they're going after a centrifuge. Stockman gets it. Stockman's been working on trying to turn more people into mutants as well, to create his own mutant army, and Bradford ends up fighting him, and they end up putting a mutagen, explosive collar around Stockman so they can get him to turn them human. And the big thing in this episode is just kind of fighting back and forth over the centrifuge, right? And
yeah, but
the rest of the turtles not listening to Mikey. And
yeah,
Mikey saying, like, you should listen to me.
But the thing is, you described the entire that it's Mikey learning. There are 2 episodes in this exact season that do this thing 10 times better.
I would agree.
Then some.
I would agree. I would agree. Like the setup for this was very poor because it starts off with, hey, Mikey's not an idiot. He is smart. He does understand things. He just acts way more like a goofball. But the setup is basically like Mikey did a stupid thing. Mikey didn't think. When the entire idea is to show that Mikey isn't an idiot, the setup for this one fails, and it fails horribly. And the setup for this one is also based entirely on just really terrible, gross out humor. And it just overall it fails, right? Like there are other episodes that have this exact same kind of idea for Mikey as a side plotish thing, right? That they're not the main focus, and they do it way better than this episode does, and this is its main focus. So
well, I even say there's an episode which I'll even argue it is the main focus, and it does it way better. But we'll get to it when we get to it.
But I'm like, this is definitely, I would say, this is most certainly a Mikey episode, and it's a very poor Mikey episode, right?
Yeah, but one thing to note is that Karai recruits Baxter Stockman to her army, and this is something that will come into play later. So, with that said, episode 6, Target April O'Neil. I like this episode a lot.
Yeah, this is definitely a very good episode, and really kind of sets the tone for a lot of episodes going forward, in my opinion, right? Because this I think started for me like a series of episodes that really just were like very good, right? This is what I was talking about in the non-spoiler section. But Shredder Bot.
So Chrome Dome is a thing from the 80s show. I remember that much. And I'm not sure if it was a separate antenna, if it was an actual robot they fought, or if it was a nickname they gave Shredder every once in a while. But it is something. I recall that much. With that said, I do really enjoy this episode. One of my favorite things about it is that, April forgiving the turtles feels natural. As much natural as you can do it in a 22-minute long episode.
Is this the episode where she forgives them? I thought that was a bit later.
No, this is the one that Karai targets her because she knows the turtles will come to rescue her, and that while the turtles are away fighting a crank base.
Okay, no, you're right. This is the one where she does it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I do like her forgiving them felt natural because she meets Donnie at the beginning of the episode when she goes to visit Casey at the ice rink, and she still tells them, "I don't want anything to do with you." And so any other episode would throw Karai at April at the beginning, and it will be like, sorry, let's be friends again. But no, it does take until the end of the episode to trust them again.
Well, we should point out, right? Like Casey and Donnie both have a similar line of saying, like, "Hey, life happens," right? Like Donnie tells her, like, the mutating of her father wasn't entirely their fault. Things do happen. It was out of their control. And Casey ends up telling her a similar line about his own family or something like, oh no, it was with his friend and how he ended up hurting his friend and his friend never forgave him, right? It was like, hey, things happen. You have to move on. And I think that's a really good parallel, right? Like, it worked out really well. This was a good episode to bring everyone back together. And there's overall, like, it just starts out good. And in my notes I have, and Karai and April proving that the best episodes are when they're in them. And I completely stand by that because some of the best episodes are when Karai and April are both in them.
Yeah, definitely. Agreed.
But yeah, we get Casey being a badass in this episode, so all for that.
Yeah, by the way, what Casey's catchphrase of Gongala, this is something from the comics. This is not an invention of the show like Booyakasha. So, fun fact, I guess. Actually, one joke I like, they did a similar joke in the season when they are infiltrating a crank base, and Donnie tells Leo, "You don't have to tell us to be quiet every time. We're ninjas. We know how to be quiet." And his phone rings because April is calling him. And I do like that in this one. He kind of learned because he puts it on vibration. and Mike is like, "Dude, you're bison. What the hell?" I like that.
That was a good joke.
I also like that. We do, because usually when we get to Karai fight scenes, it's usually Leo that takes her on because but we did get a bit of a Donnie versus Karai in this, and this is something that we don't see often, so it was nice to see. And
Was this the episode where Leo tried to confront Karai about?
no, he still keeps that in secret
Okay,
here.
yeah,
This comes later.
okay.
But again, this is a back in the day, this was a theory of mine that when uh, Donnie sees Karai fighting April, and he's like April, and Leo tells him, I'll go help April. You take out Crumbdome." And I remember this was kind of my hint that the other turtles don't know that Karai is Splinter's daughter yet, because Leo is probably afraid that because Donnie doesn't know it, he will hurt Karai too much beyond repair. So
That's fair. I agree. I could believe that.
so yeah, this was my theory back in the day, and I will get to this when I get it, as it kind of does help with kind of a joke thing, I guess, that I have to tell. But this was a good episode, and by the way, the ending. Am I the only one who thought about the Superman movie when that happened?
When what happened exactly?
Okay, so basically, the episode ends with April coming back to the Turtles' lair, and saying that she wants to be friends with them again, and also resuming her Kunoichi training with Splinter. And the last thing that happens is that she gives Donnie a kiss on the cheek.
Yeah.
That's all we're going for, just the cheek. And it ends with Donnie flying around the globe going, "I love being a turtle." Superman the first movie, everyone.
Okay, I get you now. Yeah, I guess.
Because so I don't know, probably
That's fair.
something I. So with that said, episode 7, Slash and Destroy.
Finally, a good mutagen episode.
Okay, so before we start, my usual notes: Slash is another turtle veteran character. I don't remember much about him in the 80s show, except that he's just looking for his pinky. That you take it as you will.
He's a lot better in this one then. A lot better because Slash in this one is Spike, aka Ralph's pet turtle, which is
Raph, not
Raph's pet turtle. Sorry, which by the by, a turtle having a pet turtle raises a lot of questions. I feel about
that
things.
Turtle didn't mutate yet.
Yeah, but still, a turtle having a pet turtle, even if it's a non-mutated turtle, is still a little bit weird, in my opinion.
But
there's questions there.
Another thing about Slash
that I don't feel the show should be trying to raise.
Okay, whatever. Just go with it. Just go with it, dude. Just go with it. It's a show about turtles that do ninjas. But back to Slash. I don't remember in other versions much, but I will say that this version of Slash is voiced by Corey Feldman, who turtle fans may know as Donatello in the first live-action movie and the third one. So the best one and the worst one of the trilogy, let's be honest. He didn't voice him in the second one, don't know why. But also, he co-starred in Goonies alongside Sean Astin, the voice of Raphael in this show. So there you go. This is why I like mentioning discussing this show, because they do stuff they do in references like that, and I like it. Okay, but basically we're introduced to Slash. I liked Slash in this iteration, and I'm so happy to say this is not the last time we see him.
No, like you see him at least in this season quite a few more times. Do we see him? Spoilers. Do we see him in later seasons as well?
Oh yeah.
Cool. This is a good character. I like this character a lot. He's a lot of fun here. This episode is basically Raph is angry again.
Yeah, Raph is the angry. This has basically been his characteristic since
forever, since the Turtles ever started. I know, but I feel like I said before, they do come back to the Raph as the angry one quite a bit. But I think it's done well in this episode at the very least, because it's not necessarily the focus. It's just at the beginning.
And not only that, you can also kind of see that Slash, in a sense, is kind of like, what if Raph's anger becomes stronger? Like, what if Raph doesn't have someone to, control him?
No, what if he
Or
doesn't like control his own anger, right? Like if he just
yes,
completely surrenders to his entire anger. Like this is just Slash in this show. I feel is Raph's anger personified, right? That's what I would say.
yeah,
For
yeah,
the most
and
part,
I
at
do.
least, anyways. Like I think there is kind of a calmer nature to Slash, but for the most part, it is his anger personified or
Yes,
mutinified.
exactly.
But like it's really good. Like I like, but simply put, though, the basic gist of the show is, Raph takes the mutagen from Mikey, says, or from Mikey, from Donatello, says, you can't handle this right now. You need to get your act together. I'm taking this, and he puts it in his room. There's an accident with it. Slash gets mutated. Spike, his pet turtle, gets mutated and turns into Slash. And then
And
we spend the rest of the episode with Slash trying to convince Raph to leave his brothers and say, hey, it's just us two. We can do all this way better than the rest of them can. They're holding you back. Partner up with me. We'll do all this. And so Raph still kind of goes back and forth with himself on whether or not that's the right thing to do. And so eventually Slash decides, well, I'm going to make the choice easier for you, and he starts trying to take out his brothers.
And this is another thing. This is another thing I like, that Slash is not merciful towards the other turtle.
No.
Like Donnie gets it hard in
He
this.
gets beat up bad.
And this is another thing I like, that prior to this we didn't really see the turtles without bandanas or something, and we do see Donnie here like without without anything that really trademarks him as Donatello. And I don't know, I like little visual details like this.
Yeah.
My thing. And also I like the little girl that Leo plays with in this episode. And apparently I'm not the only one, because there are actually fan fictions about her. I'm not joking.
I mean, it was a nice little side plot thing of, Leo's trying to get the mutagen away, and it keeps just getting got by multiple different people, while the other three turtles are in a kind of fight for their life against Slash, right? It's a nice little juxtaposition thing and nice little back and forth to eventually see Leo come back and have to help deal with Slash, right?
Yes.
And eventually, they beat Slash, and he disappears for, to come back later time. But would like to point out, by the way, you talked about in season 1 how you liked the idea that Splinter wasn't just a rat who learned martial arts from watching, humans do martial arts. That's exactly the thing they do with Slash, though.
Yeah, okay.
Because Slash points out to Raph, like, I know all your moves. I've watched you my entire life. I know everything.
You know something? I won't be surprised. I won't be surprised if that's their way to reference.
I mean, it probably is. Like, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I just want to point it out because I found it funny that you made a thing, that you specifically pointed it out as something you were glad they didn't do. And yet they did it anyway.
Okay, not necessarily. Not necessarily something I'm glad that they didn't do. Just something that I personally prefer.
And I get it, right? Yeah. Like again, like I agree with you. I think it's just a reference.
But you know what?
But I still found it funny.
Good point. I didn't think about that. That's interesting.
You kind of left. You didn't. I didn't know about season 2, so when we got to this, that was my first thought of. You said this back then, so I'm going to bring this up. Well, yeah, this is a very good episode, right? Like, this is a really good episode. I really liked Slash's character and how he goes back and forth with Raph. Very, very good.
Okay, so next episode is The Good, the Bad, and the Casey Jones. Casey's first introduction to the Turtles. And, it should probably, the show already kind of gives you the idea that, yes, that Casey and Raph are going to be two buddies, and again, this is something that this is kind of been the relationships in any other of the previous incarnations. Raph and Casey are a winning team, and I do like Casey's like we said, Casey knows about mutants. He knows these things are around, and you can see that he is well prepared for everything. Like in his first encounter with Raph, like he shocks him, and he uses rollerblades to get away and everything. He's versatile. He knows what he's doing, and
Yeah,
I like it.
agreed. Like he has a bunch of different gadgets of his own that aren't necessarily ninja based. They're based around him and him doing his thing. I do want to point out we start off this episode with Raph is the angry one again, by the way. And Raph's angry
Yeah.
and he goes outside, goes away from the lair and gets away from everyone because everyone's telling him like, "Hey, you need to chill out." And he's like, "I am calm." He's not calm at all, and so then he ends up getting in a fight with Casey, who thinks he's one of the bad guys. And so they end up going back and forth and fighting one another
Uh,
and having their own thing.
until Casey finds the turtle's lair by following Raph.
And he finds
And
April there as well.
yeah,
And that's when we're introduced to apparently Casey has a fear of rats, by the way.
yeah. This is one of the things I like um, that Splinter is kind of acceptive of the idea that another human knows about them, and I think that the reason he's so accepted, he accepted so much is because he knows he can scare Casey away if he just wants to. So, Splinter is that kind of a troll. He will do that.
Yeah, I would agree. Splinter wisdom is best wisdom. I have this in my notes somewhere for one of the episodes. Splinter
Yeah.
is best character, end of.
Yeah, well, he's Splinter. but yeah, I like this episode, as you know, because we built up Casey before we saw him in 2 episodes, and the grand trio is him finally coming to meet the turtles, and starting to develop his friendship with Raph, and actually Donnie going to Raphael's. Yeah, Rob Paulson, ladies and gentlemen, the original Raphael is in this show. Get it? But actually, fun fact, there are actually 3 Raphaels in this show, because Nolan North, who voices the Crank, voiced Raphael in the 2007 CG movie. So yeah,
All the
joke
rats.
is so joke is not all that accurate, but whatever. Anyway,
Something
fight scene in this episode, Raph and Casey
on the train. Yes, I was going to put that out too. The camera work here of it circling around the train and seeing them fight that foot soldier together. That was so good. That was exceptionally good. This is where I really started to notice, like, wow, they really upped their animation and camera work with their fight scenes, especially. Like, this was really well done. Like, exceptionally good work, in my opinion.
So yeah, that fight scene, great. And also notice how much they allow themselves brutality when the villains are robots.
Yeah, this is true.
Like
a lot more robot heads getting cut up and stuff like that.
Yeah, like there's one robot that I remember throws his side right into the head, and it's like, ooh, if that was a human. Ooh, if that was a human.
I mean, the turtles aren't big on the whole not killing thing in the comics or like in turtle lore at all, are they? Like they do kind of have their thing of, yeah, we don't really care, right? Like they're not Batman levels of we don't kill.
No, they don't have a no-kill code. Yeah. But because one thing I remember about the comics is that when they first encounter Shredder, they don't kill him. They allow him to die honorably by letting him kill himself. So I'm not sure. I don't remember much about the comics, but they don't necessarily have a no kill. But if they know what they're fighting is a bunch of robots, they are not going to show mercy.
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely. But I mean, it's a nice little thing, I guess, for the show to get away with, cutting off heads and things like that, right?
Yeah.
Since robots. But yeah, this was another great episode, and we get to see Casey really kind of come into that whole vigilante thing from that, everyone kind of knows him as. And it was neat to see him be off of the ice rink, because the first episode we ever got to see him kind of fight in was on the ice rink against the Footbots, right?
Yeah.
Which was really cool and really neat to see, and kind of cool to see him be such a badass in that moment. But it's neat to see him go from the ice rink to kind of on the street doing his vigilante thing, and just how prepared he is and how capable he is at doing so as well. It's really cool, really neat.
Yeah.
Thumbs up from me.
So, anything else about this episode? Or we can move on to the next one because I was waiting so hard.
No, let's go ahead. Moving on.
Okay, episode 9, The Crank Conspiracy. I gotta know, what did you think about this one?
Kurtzman is cool. I like Mr. Trenchcoat Detective Journalist dude. He's really cool.
That's all of your notes about this?
No. So this is an episode where we learn about the past with the Krang, and with April, and we learn that the Krang have apparently been involved with Earth and trying to mutate Earth and humans for ever since the Earth has been around, supposedly.
Yeah,
for a long time. And, spoilers, we learn a bit later that, the Krang were apparently the ones who mutated, humans from the monkeys, right? Like, they mutated the monkeys into humans. They're the ones that helped evolution in this show's lore, I guess you would say. Which is neat, I guess. Like, it's a neat way to use the Krang and evolve them, which is definitely vastly different from normal, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Like, again, the Krang are not a race of alien. The Krang is usually a soul alien, but it is kind of a reference to the Utrams, which inspired Krang from the original comics and the 2003 show.
Cool.
I'm not and they are the ones who created the mutagen. I don't necessarily remember the reasons behind it, but yeah, it's not. I'm not sure if I don't think the background of they tried to mutate the planet since the planet was since Earth became a thing was something from the previous incarnations. At least not that I know of.
So it's not a total lore thing. It's just this show's lore thing.
Yeah, but before this, my fun thing about this episode.
This is also the episode where we learn that April is part Krang.
Yeah, we'll get to this. We'll get to April soon. I just want to point out one small thing.
Go ahead.
That they do point out that the Krang rebuilt the TCLI building, which was destroyed in the season 1 finale, and around that time, I was writing a fanfic about this show, which was a crossover with another franchise, which I would not mention for reasons. But the thing is that one of the things that happens in that fanfic is that the Turtles are spying on that building being rebuilt. They are noticing that the Krang are rebuilding the building, so they inspect. And then all of a sudden, as I'm starting to upload this story to the fanfiction.net site, this episode happens, and I'm like, oh shit, I caught something. Neat.
Fair.
And this will return. But anyway, April. I will say this before getting to that big plot twist that everyone probably wants us to talk about.
Oh, we already mentioned it.
Yeah, but not the entirety of it. But I like how she's training with the Turtles, but you can see that the Turtles are like in a whole other level than her. That she's still training, she's still figuring ninjutsu out. She's because when she's going out on patrol with the Turtles, she gets tired easily. She's kind of holding them back. Yeah, and I like it that she's not just a kunoichi all of a sudden. Like, it does take her a while to get there. I like it. That's fun. And Wolf kind of muted myself to talk on my own for a second. So just moving on to the twist that April is essentially half mutant, which also, Oh, you're back.
Yes, I'm back. Where are we at?
Yeah, so I was just talking about April being half mutant, which is the big twist of this episode.
Yeah. But she's not. Well, I guess yes, she is technically a mutant, but she's half Krang, half human. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like maybe not half, but she's at least some part Krang, some part human. That's why she can do the whole mind.
Yeah, that explains. But what did you think about it? And I'll tell you right now, this is something the show made up. This is
Yeah,
not a thing in any
I
other.
kind of figured that might be the case. I like it. I think it's a neat thing for the character to make her more important, I guess, to give her something unique for this show, and to kind of say like, hey, she's not just the damsel in distress who needs to be rescued by the turtles all the time. It kind of gives her thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Besides
Yeah.
just learning martial arts and being good at martial arts with the turtles. So I like it. I enjoyed it. I think it's a good little change and a good thing to add.
Mm-hmm. So another thing though that when I watched this episode, I watched it like a few minutes before heading out to the job I had at the time. So imagine seeing this episode with a giant apple creature going derp 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 before you head out you head to work.
That thing.
That thing. But again, I enjoyed this episode. It's kind of a weirder type of episode.
Yeah.
And one thing I do forgot to mention in the previous episode, but I'll mention now because we see this character again. Krang Prime. She's voiced by Roseanne Barr from Roseanne, and that's all I'll say about her because But yeah, I'm not bringing it up. I don't want to break my trend, so
I mean,
might as well mention
just talking
this.
about the VA work, she does good here. I'll say that. The VA work she does here is good for Krang Prime. It works.
Yeah. But that was the Krang conspiracy. Again, I like this one. Maybe not as strong, maybe as some of the previous episodes we had, but I like it.
No, I think it was just as strong as some of the previous episodes. I think it was definitely somewhat of a departure, kind of. Again,
it got by due to weirdness, which I like.
I don't think it was that, but I think it was more so like when I say departure, it was we had a very consistent theme of what we were doing, and then all of a sudden we're doing this now, and it changes things up a lot, right? And it comes at kind of a weird point. And this is one of the problems with those kind of monster of the weekish type series, where when you try and involve that more heavy lore and that more heavy story stuff, it throws a lot of things out, right? And it can definitely mess it up and make it not work as well. I think they overall did okay with it here, and it turned out for a good episode. Yeah. I think if we were doing a more story-focused thing, it would work a lot better, but maybe that's just me.
And again, Revelation aside, I do like what this does to with April still learning to be a Kunrich and not mastering it right away. I like it. With that said, episode 10, Fungus Among Us, because Fungus Humongous, because every kids show needs we can't show drugs, so let's put something that's like drugs in the episode.
Is the glowing thing that Leo and Splinter are doing at the first part of this episode, is that going to be a thing later? What's the deal with the glowing? Is that just...
I think it is something that's related to Japanese, to Japanese men.
I know. Yeah, well, because it's like the meditation thing, right? Like the glowing thing is related to like meditation and.
But I think it does season at some point.
Okay, all right, no, that's fair, because we see Splinter doing these things where it feels a bit, is he like the turtles kind of have a big thing of Asian mysticism within their comics and other shows, right?
Well, Japanese, ninjutsu and stuff.
Yeah, like, again, like Eastern Asian mysticism, stuff like that. But we do see Splinter do techniques where, like, there's one in the previous season where, like, he attacks Splinter with air using his fingers, right? And we even have an episode later in this very season where,
that happens too.
So I am curious, like, is that going to be a thing that we learn more about later with the turtles too?
It is going to be kind of a plot-related thing in an episode of the next season.
Okay, that's fair. Okay.
With that said, this episode, for the mandatory, we need the characters to do kind of drugs episode so that we can go insane. For one, I like the creativity. of the nightmares. With the exception of Mikey and the Scolanoids, again, I don't Scolanoids all that much. But the one thing I will say that it is a good episode for Leo.
Yeah, this is a really good episode for Leo. Like, it kind of shows him not so much mastering his fear, but facing it. His fear being like he doesn't want to.
This is something that we need to explain, though, that the turtles come across like this these kind of mushrooms that that make you see the thing you fear the most.
Yeah.
So Casey is afraid of rats. April is afraid of bats.
No, she's afraid of her dad, mostly of her mutated dad coming back to try and eat her potentially.
Yeah, Raph is afraid of cockroaches. Mike has the scolanoids. Donnie is afraid of April loving Casey more than him, and Leonardo's fear is losing his team, losing his brothers.
He's afraid to fail them as a leader, right? He's afraid to make the wrong choice and cost them all something dear, like their lives or anything like that, right? Like his fear is failure as a leader. And like we get a bit of this in like him talking to Splinter at the beginning of the episode, where Leonardo's unable to focus. We'll get to that. But he's unable to focus at the beginning of the episode, and Splinter asks him why, and he says, "Well, I keep having this reoccurring nightmare of me failing as leader, right? Of losing my brothers." And Splinter tells him, that's kind of the thing as a leader. You just have to accept that that's a fear you're going to have, and you have to face it regardless, no matter what. And he tells him, like, I face this fear every time I let you and your brothers go up to the surface, right? Like, that's a good little... I mention that because I think it's a nice little thing of Splinter kind of being their father and everything. Like, a nod to that. I think it's a nice little nod.
Yeah, and I also like at the end where, Leo says that he didn't really face the fear because he keeps facing this fear every day.
Splinter asks him, like, did you master your fear? And he says, no, I just faced it. I think that's a good way to phrase that, right? Like, because you can't ever really master that fear of losing people who you care deeply about, right? You just have to deal with it and face it, all the time. But
it does show... But again, it does show how strong he is.
It shows growth on his part. It shows, like, he did grow. He has learned something from this experience, right? Which is cool.
Yep. So with that said, episode 11...
A bit of a... Well, to kind of finish off, like, episode 10, maybe not the strongest episode overall, but definitely a good Leo episode, I feel.
Yeah. Agreed. So episode 11, Metalhead Rewind. So Metalhead goes haywire, basically, and...
Not quite. He does kind of go off on his own, but I like this episode. This was a good episode involving the robot. Robot being like Metalhead being the robot that Donnie creates, right? I did like the joke of Metalhead constantly hurting Mikey with his rocket fists.
Yeah, that
was a good reoccurring joke. Like, that was used well. I feel I liked that. Similar to the Leatherhead constantly going after Donnie. I like how it's both Leatherhead goes after Donnie, Metalhead goes after Mikey. I like the reverse here.
Payback.
Yeah.
Payback.
Almost like Donnie programmed him to do it. Wink, wink.
Nudge, nudge.
Yeah. I like that kind of parallel there, though. But I think this is a good episode. But go ahead.
Well, one thing that is kind of interesting here is that this is we get our kind of first glimpse of Dimension X in this show, which is the Krang home planet. So, or home dimension, whatever. But we get the first glimpse of it here, and Metalhead is kind of left behind, and we have this tearful goodbye from him.
Yeah.
But
it's a cool little moment, though. Like, Metalhead sacrifices himself to save not just the turtles, but all of the mutants that the Krang had captured, because the Krang had captured April's dad, Slash, Snake Bites. He kind of comes back briefly. The weed dude, Snake Weed, like, he's back in there for a moment. Like, everyone kind of gets many of the mutants you've seen previously kind of come back, like the doctor who got turned into a monkey, whose name I can't remember, comes back. The bee is back.
Yeah, the
All
bee
the
is
previous
back.
mutants are, you get a small glimpse of each of them in this episode of them being saved by Metalhead and the Turtles.
Yep.
So it's a neat little thing.
Um, yeah, but this is one of the episodes that I look back and I don't necessarily remember much of it. So
I don't think it's a
it's fine.
standout episode. I think but it's good filler, right?
Yeah, I'll say this is what it is, a good film.
Like, yeah, I have in my kind of episode notes, a good episode, nothing major going on for it really, but overall a good episode.
Mm-hmm. With that said, episode 12 of Rats and Men.
We come back with Rat King, whose name I can't remember, but
Yeah,
Rat King works. Yeah. Rat King is back. By the way, Ice Cream Kitty is cool and funny. I'll gladly admit that. Ice Cream Kitty is definitely a favorite.
Yeah, I was about to say that this is the introduction of Ice Cream Kitty, Michelangelo's new pet, and I love this thing.
Which, by the by, is a mutant that basically is a cat that gets mutated by Donnie dropping ice cream into the mutagen and the cat licking it, and basically, God, that was disturbing watching that cat melt. That was disturbing. Yeah, it turns into a cool and cute little thing, but God, it's disturbing watching that cat literally melt.
Yeah, but that aside, this thing is adorable.
Not the way it's created, though. The way it's created is disturbing. But after that, it's cute. After that, it's cute. But I love the fact that it's actually used very well in this episode where, like, spoiler, we have Rat King coming back. He's trying to take over Splinter again, but actually what he's done is used, he's invaded Splinter's mind to try and find out how Splinter came to be what he is, right?
Yes.
And so, we see that Rat King's apparently trying to turn other humans into, people like mutated human rats like Splinter is, right? And so he ends up capturing Casey, he ends up capturing Irma and many other kind of random New York people, right? And he's also come back with giant mutated rats now that we have to deal with as well.
And this is one of the things I like, that he's actually managing to get to Splinter, but Splinter does manage to beat him, and the fight between him and Splinter at the end of the episode.
Yes. I love how that ended, where you have him actually kind of using Splinter's thing of, like, Splinter takes the first of this episode where he fights Leonardo blind, right? And he beats Leonardo because he talks about, like, hey, it's you think you're in control, but you're not, because it's about a bunch of the whole ninjutsu training thing and martial arts and training with your eyes closed and blinded and different senses, stuff like that. You've kind of heard all that before if you've watched a martial arts thing, right? But I like how they turn that on its heel a bit, where Rat King is actually able to, even though he's not trained in martial arts, he's able to dodge a lot of Splinter's attacks and even get hits in on Splinter because, he can see through the rat's eyes, right? But the second Splinter gets rid of the rat, he's able to... And the second Splinter's able to get rid of the rat that, Rat King uses to be able to see through and then encloses his own eyes, the Rat King is completely left blind himself. Right? Like...
Yes. I agree.
Splinter really, really messes with his head a lot, and kind of goes through doling out his splinterish wisdom, and then all of a sudden, the Rat King is gone. I think this is our first. Does he come back? Question.
No.
All right, this is our first, I guess, technically death, quote unquote.
Yeah, maybe.
Also,
but again,
go ahead.
Great fight. Just Splinter. Splinter is awesome.
I really love the way it's animated. I really love the way they do the work for this one.
The scenery is just
Which
great.
brings the question, what in the hell is this New York sewer?
I don't know. I don't question it.
This is the weirdest New York sewer I have ever seen in my entire life. Like, we have what looks like an underground city within this New York sewer. Like, this is weird. Like, fair enough, right? It's a show. I shouldn't care that much, but it still comes off as like that was the second I saw this. Like, they're jumping through this area of the sewer that is apparently has this giant void, chasmous void, void like chasm at the bottom of it where it's just they're jumping on platforms and it's like, what in the hell are we? Where are we at right now? Is this a sewer?
Yeah.
Are we still in New York? Because it doesn't feel like it. But
Okay.
that
Fair,
that's just
but
a
at the same time,
funny little side thing for me that I noticed that kind of stood out to me. But best part of this episode, Ice Cream Kitty.
yeah. With that said, we are moving on to a tradition now, starting with the second season. This is one of the things that I said I'm about to bring up. That how in the previous in the first season we had two-parter episodes, the season opener and the season finale. Now starting with the second season, there will always be like a mid-season event. And the season finale would always be like a big two-parter, three-parter if we're in season 5. But
cool.
So starting with this, we have like this mid-season two-parter, which Nickelodeon would hype like it was the second coming of Jesus or something.
Well, I mean, I think it's worth it. I think that was worth doing for this one, though. I think this one was really good.
Yeah, but with that said, we have Wormquake, also known as the Manhattan Project, which I would like to tell people, no, this has nothing to do with the third Ninja Turtles game on the NES, which is also called the Manhattan Project. But
probably
cool
a reference, though. Yeah.
Yeah, but cool reference.
So,
with that said, are we going to talk about the ending bit of this episode first, just to get it out of the way?
If you want to, go for it.
Okay, so to those who don't know, this episode originally aired in 2014, which was the 30th anniversary of the Ninja Turtles. And to celebrate, we got a small cameo by the 80s Turtles at the end of this episode, which NDS...
At the end of this two-parter, we should say. Like, this is
at
the end of episode 14.
The end. They show up for a bit in a non-speaking role.
Was that voiced by the original cast?
Yeah, and this is what I want to say, that when the Turtles, the 80s Turtles do show up at the end, and they're talking, these are indeed Cam Clark, Townsend Coleman, Barry Gordon, and Rob Paulson reprising their roles, the original Leonardo, Michelangelo, Donatello, and Raphael, respectively.
That's cool.
These are indeed the original actors. And this is something that actually brought a lot of noise because, to those who don't know, there was a cross in the 2003 Turtles and the 80s Turtles, but due to 4Kids being like a union and being like a non-union actors, they couldn't bring them back to voice the characters. So this was like Nickelodeon's way of quote-unquote fixing that by bringing the originals back again to voice these classic characters. And for what it is, which is a small cameo, this was a really cool small cameo.
Yeah, it's a neat little side thing that's a good nod to for old fans and new fans alike. If you're into it, it's neat.
And also, this is not the last time we see the 80s Turtles, and a lot of people are happy about that.
Oh, cool.
So we got that part of the episode out of the way.
Yeah, that's the ending of the two-parter. So we start off with Shredder comes back, and he comes back with a Bengal tiger mutant whose name is Tiger Claw.
Voiced by Eric Bauza, who is pretty much in a lot of things lately. The one thing that's worth mentioning is that he is currently voicing Splinter in the Rise of the Teenage Ninja Turtles cartoon. So that's something. Like, he's done so many voice work, I can't really think of something on top of my head, but Google him. He's a good voice actor. You probably heard him in something.
Yeah.
So he comes.
Tiger Claw. I like the design of it, by the way. Really cool design. And really cool character, I feel.
Yeah, he's definitely one of my villains of the show. And then we also start to see that Leo is trying to reach Karai about being Splinter's daughter.
Well, start off with we have Tiger Claw and Karai go after April and Casey respectively. Really loved how Casey kind of holds on against Tiger Claw for a bit, right? Like here, like
Yeah.
he does decently well at trying to avoid and evade. He can actually take him down, but he does do a decent job of avoiding and evading him and keeping him busy for quite a while, right? Like it's actually really interesting to see that, especially considering this is a very, I guess you'd say, quote unquote, strong character, right? Like he's definitely
Yes.
supposed to be this formidable force.
Like he's a hitman, and we will get to his backstory later. But yeah, he's very trained. He's very professional, and you can see that he does give the Turtles a bit of a run for their money.
Yeah, but I skipped ahead a bit there with the Casey and Tiger Claw fight. But yeah, the first fight is with Tiger Claw and Karai going after the Turtles. They end up beating the Turtles quite handily, or Tiger Claw ends up beating the Turtles by himself quite handily, and they get
Yeah.
captured, and they have to call Splinter.
This is something I do want to bring up. Splinter has two great comedy moments in this. One is that when they call him through the cheese phone.
Yes,
I
that
love
was
this.
silly, but that was great. I
The
enjoyed
cheese
that.
phone, clearly an emergency.
Yes,
But
that was
another
silly,
thing,
but I got a laugh out of that. That was a good joke. I like that one.
but another thing I like is that Leo does talk to him about trying to talk something to Karai, and tell her that Splinter is her father, and he says like there's a saying, before someone says something stupid, they should put nunchucks in their mouth, something like that.
Yeah.
And Leo's like, there's a saying like this in Japan. It's like, they would if you lived
Yeah,
there.
that was a good joke too.
Yeah, but this is where the Turtles also first learned that Karai is indeed Splinter's daughter. Leo kept this away from Splinter as well. So
we get to kind of see the rest of their reactions, right? Like that's a really good way of doing that.
Which is the other thing in the fanfic I mentioned before, that I kind of had this idea that the other Turtles might not know, and Splinter and Leo told this out afterwards. So this is another thing I put in my fanfiction thing, which coincidentally was uploaded the same time as this episode came out. So, boy, what a bad timing. But whatever. That's in the past. Moving on. So what else?
We have after, like we have also like a big thing with the Krang as well, kind of doing their own side plot, and we kind of
we should mention that there's like an A plot and a B plot. The A plot is Leo, Mikey, Raph against Shredder, Karai, and Tiger Claw. Alongside Splinter, who was kidnapped at one point.
Yes, because Splinter gets poisoned. He ends up freeing his son. Like Splinter comes to save his sons from Tiger Claw. Splinter ends up handily, fighting against Tiger Claw and beating him quite well, right? With a little bit of trouble, but mostly he's far above Tiger Claw's level, right?
Yeah, like the only reason he really loses is because he sees Karai, and that kind of throws them.
Well, Karai also poisons him.
yeah, but the thing is that the reason she was able to touch him is because he sees her, and that kind of sends him into. And again, another Shredder versus Splinter fight. That's always great. That's always sign me up for those.
I do like this because you have this moment of Leo tells Karai who Splinter is to her. She sees Splinter react the way he does to her as well, and she keeps Shredder from killing him outright, saying like, "Hey, there's no honor in this. You can't just kill him this way." And even Tiger Claw stands up and says, "I agree. You can't just kill him this way. There's no honor in it. Like he deserves a final fight." And that was a nice little moment, too, of kind of seeing the questioning there from Karai and seeing that Tiger Claw isn't someone who's entirely evil, I guess you'd say. Like, he does have his code of honor, right? Which was a neat thing. It kind of lends to the character a bit, right? But during that, you see, Raph, Leonardo, and Mikey go after to rescue Splinter. And then during that time, you have Donnie, Casey, and April kind of coming together.
This is where we kind of see Dimension X fully for the first time.
Yes.
And we find out that the Krang is creating the mutagens by milking those giant worms.
Yes.
And I just love how these worms are moving around like they are bouncing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a fish out of water kind of thing. And I remember because I watched this episode with a friend, and we got to this part where you see Donnie, Casey, and April running away from this worm, and the worm is like going after them, and it's like jumping like that, and you see the look at its face, and I just remember my friend going, "Oh, it wants to play." That's exactly what it is. You know, it's so. But then there's this small worm rubbing its face against April, and then when it chooses it has like this human face. What the heck is
Well, I mean, they also have like the tail of the worms have those like human baby face things, which is
Yeah,
weird. I
yeah.
guess that's supposed to be like, hey, it's Dimension X. It's weird things, right? But eh,
Yeah, and this is something you could do without.
yeah, definitely. Especially since the joke, is like, the joke is like April thinks the thing rubbing her is Casey rubbing her, ass, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
the
like
joke, and that's not
yeah.
what's happening, but that's supposed to be the joke. It's very meh. It doesn't land as well as I think they thought it would, I guess.
Oh well, considering the entire insanity and excitement of this episode, you can let
Yeah,
the
yeah.
joke slide.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely. But yeah,
but
like
yeah, great climax and how all the plots are coming together.
yeah, like we have
And
the worm plot, right? Like the plot with the Krang, like the worm ends up eating Tiger Claw, and all of that gets sucked into the dimension
the
with the 1980s turtles, right?
yeah,
And that
and this
actually
is
comes back to play later too.
yes, exactly. And and I will say when the 80s stars show up again, it does connect to it as well. But
Cool.
we'll get
That'll
to
be
that.
neat to see.
We'll,
But we also have this thing of
but another thing about
oh, go ahead.
the ending though, that there is a point where April does tell Splinter, "I can't believe Karai is your daughter," and you see Karai listening to this without them seeing her, and she's like, "Whoa!" And she has this moment of realization, like, "Whoa, maybe I am his daughter. Maybe I'm not
Yeah.
Shredder's daughter."
Yeah.
This was a really good.
Well, you kind of also see like she's starting to question Shredder and his, vendetta, and is he as honorable as she thought he was, things of that nature, right? Like it's nice to see that, and I think they did really well showing that kind of in the animation there too. Also, pointing back out, Kurtzman reprises his role too as well, which is nice. Like we see Kurtzman again, which is a cool little nod back and bringing back previous stuff to really wrap up and really, make this two-parter feel bigger, I guess you would say, right? Like involving all these different characters and people that we've seen previously coming back. It's really neat.
Yep. So yeah, for the first mid-season special, this was a good way to start this, if you ask me.
Absolutely agreed.
With that said, mazes and mutants, and I will say I'm not a fan of this one.
You're not a fan of this one. I didn't mind it. I thought it was good.
And and this is something I want to ask you because point at purposes you kind of binge this season, and like so between the two-parter and this there was a pretty long wait between the two, and I think when this is the first episode you have of this big two-parter, and and the episode before that, this felt pretty weak.
Yeah, from that perspective, I could definitely see how this would feel very lackluster and not as enjoyable. From the perspective of binging it, I thought it was a decent little come down from the two-parter, like, a nice relaxing thing, kind of side story. It's not great, right? Because you did come off this big two-parter. It would be nice to kind of continue on some of those storylines that we just kind of left open from this one, from the two-parter, right?
Yeah.
But it's not from a binging perspective. It's not the worst thing ever. But from I had to wait 2 weeks to see this episode after that two-parter, and this is what I get. I can absolutely understand why people would be, this isn't great. But like looking at the show itself, It's basically we're doing a D&D ripoff, but we can't say D&D because D&D's lawyers are very, very litigious against people if they ever use D&D. So you
Yeah.
have to do a D&D ripoff.
The thing, actually, I think this episode where we have Raphael say, "I don't do rings," which is another reference to how it's Sean Astin who was in Lord of the Rings, and yeah.
Yep.
So, but
But I think it's a nice little joke as well because
not,
they have Mikey do the whole turn into
no,
Gollum thing over his ring.
Yeah.
Because that's a joke that appears in this too.
And yeah, and Donnie is basically Gandalf.
Not Donnie. Well, yeah, we have Donnie is Gandalf essentially. We have, Leonardo playing the role of the knight, and we have Mikey playing the role of the elf. And like I said, like Mikey makes the big joke of his ring is, he turns into Gollum over it. Also, we end up seeing like something Mikey really cares about dropped into lava, and that's supposed to be a big thing where Gollum jumps into the lava after his precious item. Except in this case, the precious item wasn't all that precious, and he's like, "Meh, I'm over it."
Yeah.
So again, some nice jokes to Lord of the Rings and D&D in general in this one. I liked it. As a D&D and Lord of the Rings somewhat nerd, I liked this.
Okay, fair enough. Like, it's not a bad episode, but again, waiting for so long after
that I can completely understand.
It's kind of.
It's definitely could be in that regard. I can definitely understand this being a very meh and disappointing next episode after that 2-part.
Yeah.
For me, it was decent.
With that said, we have the lonely mutation of Baxter Stockman. So fans of the 80s show might remember that in the second season, Baxter Stockman mutates into a fly, which is a concept that now carries over here.
And it's disgusting.
I will say, okay. I'll give you that because I think the once I thought about this was that I'm not sure if you've seen how Baxter Stockman as a fly looks in the 80s cover.
I haven't. I'm sure it's just as bad, if not worse.
No, it's very cool.
Okay.
Let's say this. So this is like for lack of a better term, this is like the edgy grown-up reboot version of it. Which I like the idea behind this, that it is a fly, so it's a bit more grotesque, and the way he eats stuff.
Yes.
I like that as an idea, not necessarily something I need to watch. But overall, I like what they did with the fly Stockman in this.
I see the old cartoon version. It's definitely more cartoony than what this one is.
Mm-hmm.
Very much so.
By the way, maybe it's the fact that I'm kind of a fan of the '86 movie The Fly. That maybe this is the reason why I actually like this. But
maybe, but like I think this is the episode where we see the retro mutagen finally get made, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is where we revert April's dad's mutation, and we were going to revert Splinter's mutation, but unfortunately the retro mutagen to do that is lost, and Donnie doesn't have enough to make more retro mutagen.
And this is also like how Shredder kind of blackmails Stockman to be a part of his crew.
Yeah.
That if he works for him, he'll be able to make the retro mutagen to turn him back into a human.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, and not only that, like Shredder's the reason he turns into a mutant in the first place, because we see the first of this episode, Stockman's failed too many times. Shredder doesn't make idle threats, and so he clicks the button for the mutation, for the explosive mutation collar to trigger. It doesn't at first, so Stockman gets all excited that, oh, thank goodness they didn't do it, and then it does explode, and he gets mutagen over on him and turns into a fly.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But so this is a fun episode, and again, I like the idea behind how they handled Baxter's mutation.
Yeah, I don't see anything. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just another mutagen episode. not the strongest things ever. The same as, with the previous episode, many of the mutagen episodes, other than, I would say, slashes, are fairly weak, in my
Okay,
opinion.
fair,
When we're
fair.
dealing with the Krang plot, when we're dealing with the Karai and Shredder and Splinter plot, that's when the show is the strongest. When it's just mutagen monster of the week plot, it's weaker. There's some decent episodes in there, Slash being the absolute strongest in my opinion, with the Mazes and Mutants episode, mutagen episode being decent, and a few others being, mostly decent. Like, this one's definitely, again, just a weaker episode. Like, most of the mutagen
Yes.
episodes are fairly weak.
Well, with that said, next episode,
Yeah, I guess so.
Neutralized. One, not related to the episode itself, but I think this is the first time we have an episode where we see Casey without April, which I think is good because Casey does need to, seeing how he's a new introduction to this specific series. I do think he needs to stand on his own and
But I
not
feel
be
like
connected to.
we're kind of repeating. So I have this in my notes here where I started to feel like we're repeating a lot of previous plot lines in this season quite often, where the big thing between this is tension arises between Raph and Casey, where they have issues with one another, and they're butting heads now, and it's kind of like, why? It felt like, why are they doing this? It felt like they kind of got over their issues previously. Why are we revisiting them again?
On the one hand, I get the why, because Tiger Claw, okay, not Tiger Claw, but when it comes to like Slash and the Neutralizer, these are another level kind of mutant that Casey didn't really face before. So I can see how Raph is a bit worried regarding that.
I get it,
but
it does start to feel like, we've repeated Leo having leader issues, Raph having anger issues, people butting heads constantly. It feels like we've repeated this enough. I would like to move on from it somewhat.
Yeah, this is not the strongest of this season. I agree.
I like that Slash is back. That's great. I like that we're reusing the Neutralizer, which is basically just this world's version of the Punisher.
Yep.
Let's be honest. Like, he is the This is this is Alien Punisher is what it is. The Neutralizer is just Alien Punisher.
Yeah, agreed.
Which, nothing wrong with that, by the way. But yeah, like, the Neutralizer and Slash team up to take down Krang, apparently.
And
the Neutralizer's big thing is take out the Krang at any cost, no matter who else gets hurt, right? That's his big thing. And Slash,
that's his big thing.
It's nice to learn that Slash actually is against that. He doesn't want to hurt humans if at all possible, right? Like, he does want to take out the Krang, but he doesn't want to necessarily take out humans as well.
Yeah.
But
again, will play into something later with him as the show
That's
goes.
actually cool to learn, later on as well. But we also have this thing of, I've lost my train of thought. What was I going to say? Like, we have this thing of, Slash kind of telling Casey, like, hey, Raph's got a new partner. Well, guess what? He betrayed me. Will he betray you the same way he betrayed me? Stuff like that. A bit of partner things going on, which was kind of neat, kind of seeing them go back and forth a little bit.
Yeah. Definitely.
Maybe not the strongest episode in the entire season, but overall, like, I enjoyed it. It just felt like, for a bit, I did have the issue of it felt like we were repeating some plot lines here of some of the turtles and their issues, right? And people kind of butting heads who felt like they kind of solved their issues, so why are they butting heads again? I get it, but it did start to feel like at this point that we were repeating some of this stuff over and over, and I'd like to move on and see new character growth. These characters experience new growth in new ways.
Yeah. So, with that said, one of my favorite episodes of this season,
really?
Pizza Face.
I didn't think you would like this one as much because it still felt like we were...
Pizza Face? I loved it.
Well, the reason I say it kind of felt like Mikey... It felt like he was doing the whole Mikey is the idiot one again.
I would argue that no. Like, again, this is what I'm saying, that he's not an idiot, he's just a goofball. And I think that fit with it because And it also kind of felt because that the other turtles and April and is getting mind controlled.
Mm-hmm.
So you could maybe this is kind of close, but at the same time, I like how it's basically Mikey versus the villain,
Yeah.
and it does have his moment in the sense that not only does he take the villain out, but he manages to handle himself against the three of his brothers and Splinter together. So this was a good episode for him. I really like this.
He does it in. I guess that works because he kind of does it in his Mikey way of he just eats his way out
Yeah,
because he eats the
but
villain mostly.
yeah, but again, I have a
Which,
problem
by
with
the
this
way, he just
because,
ate a human.
well, it was a human pizza, so
Still ate a human. So I mean, that's a mutant that they're not going to be able to unmutate. By the way.
well, there is kind of a hint at the end of this that this guy is still around
Oh,
as
so
a
he
pizza
does come back.
trays.
I was wondering, does he does come back, huh?
No,
Okay,
he
then never
doesn't come
mind.
back. But I
Again,
like
why
this
are they
episode.
doing that though? Like, why end it that way? Of because I was gonna ask, like, does this villain come back? He doesn't come back. Why end it in
I will
these
say,
ways?
I will say this. While these characters don't come back, there is kind of a way that you can tell what happened to them. I
I
won't say,
guess.
I
I
won't say
guess.
beyond that.
I guess.
But another thing, this one again, I like that it's a Michelangelo solo story that doesn't really focus on him being a dimwit. Because it does figure stuff out. It does figure, okay, this pizza is dangerous. There's obviously something going on with everyone acting. I need to figure out what's going on, and he does. And he does beat the villain. I was a bit iffy of is this a dream? But they kind of that open that it's a dream, so
Yeah.
I'm cool with that.
They do it well.
Also again, the fact I saw that the One Quake episode where I saw this episode, well, and at one point it says the people making this show are probably having the time of their lives, and I have to agree, because wouldn't you enjoy writing about the humanoid pizza turning people into zombie pizzas?
And eating people by turning them into calzones.
Yes.
Sure, I guess I would. Maybe, I don't know. It feels a bit silly, but sure.
Well,
Too
fun
silly.
can be silly.
But I mean, it's another. Simply put, this is another mutagen episode, and by far, I don't think this is the weakest mutagen episode. I think there are other mutagen episodes that are way weaker than this one is. I don't think it's the strongest mutagen episode. I think definitely the episode with Slash takes that one, in my opinion. But this is still, like you said, I don't mind it. I think it's a good episode.
Well, there's also the thing that might be a bit biased because it's Mikey.
Oh, sure, but I mean, I might be also a bit biased because I've not really gotten into Mikey's humor. Like I said, when we did season 1, the VA for Mikey is also the same VA for Beast Boy, and I never really enjoyed his humor for Beast Boy, and I don't really enjoy his humor for Mikey. Maybe I'll change on that as the season goes on, because I did start to change on that for Beast Boy a little bit as well. So, I'm not entirely sold on his humor yet, really.
Okay.
And like I said before, I kind of enjoy when he does more serious moments with his characters. And we've not really seen that really from Mikey yet, I feel.
Okay.
Here and there, we've gotten a bit of it, but nothing major yet.
So, with that said, we have the return of Tiger Claw. You already said you like Tiger Claw. So I'm assuming this was to your liking.
Yeah, this was good. I loved how they did, Tiger Claw says, how did you went into this other dimension, how did you get back? And he kind of, and you see the flashback story, which, by the way, I love how they do flashbacks in this show with the kind of comic book panel and the comic book art style. Love that. Really good. But we get him coming back. He, says, I fought against those other turtles, and you kind of see him fighting against the other turtles in the flashback and the worms, and just going through many different dimensions to finally arrive back in his dimension. It's good.
Yes,
I like that. That was really clever, and I enjoyed that little rendition.
Yeah, and this is also point where the turtles actually start acting upon trying to get Karai on their side.
Mm-hmm. Well, mostly Leonardo. Raph's still against it, but he does go along with it. And Donnie's kind of against it too. But it's actually a trick because Karai gets into the lair and is tricking them to get into the lair, to lead Tiger Claw to the lair, to find it and expose it. But thanks to Splinter, she's actually genuinely convinced by him and how he reacts to and treats her. Like, he actually does end up convincing her that, yes, she is his daughter. Which is a really nice little moment between Splinter and Karai, right? Like, seeing them kind of reunite. It's a very, I would say, it's a well-done, tender moment from the show, which you don't get a lot of, I would say.
Yeah, agreed. But again, I do like that they are starting to walk in this direction. Mm-hmm. That that it's not just and I do like that Karai does confront Shredder about this.
Yes, and we even see before we one thing I'll interrupt with is the fight between the turtles at the end of this episode with Tiger Claws, really well done in the meat factory, like really good animation and camera work, everything going on there. And you see Karai come in at the end of it because Tiger Claws still does technically beat the turtles, but Karai comes in at the end of it and betrays Tiger Claw, fights him, gets captured, and taken back to Shredder. Now go ahead.
Yeah, but so what I was about to say is that I like how Karai does confront Shredder about this.
Yes.
And he doesn't lie.
No.
He does say, yes, you are Splinter's daughter. And this gives a very interesting angle on Shredder's character in this, because considering something we'll see in a future episode of this season, there's you can tell that he does see Karai as his own daughter.
Yes.
But then when she asks him, he tells her that without really any emotional mercy. And it's interesting. It's really interesting to see like a villain that is like, she's onto it. She's smart. I'll let her know the truth.
I mean, I think he realizes like if he lies, right, like that's going to do him more harm than good. But he also doesn't think it. I guess in his mind it shouldn't matter ever, right? Like it shouldn't matter what happened. I raised you. That's all that matters, I guess, from that perspective. But it's definitely interesting that that's the way they went with it. And looking at future episodes in this very season, it's interesting, how these two characters, how they work with these two characters with the writing. It's really well done. It's really good.
Yeah. Okay, so one last thing to say about this episode is that this is the final episode where Jason Biggs voices Leonardo.
Yeah, I was going to mention that, like, his voice actor changes in this particular episode.
His voice changed for one episode in Pizza Face. In this episode is Jason Biggs again, and for the rest of the season, there's the guy from the previous episode who also voices Leonardo in the two video games based on this show specifically. The actor's name is Dominic Catterbone, and the thing about this is that there was no official confirmation about this as far as I'm aware. So if I'm wrong, correct me. The reason Jason Biggs was go is because Nickelodeon, connected the Ninja Turtles Twitter account to the Twitter accounts of all the previous voice actors in the show. And after they did that, Jason Biggs made some jokes about something political. I'm not sure exactly what.
It's been many years ago, so
like the jokes themselves were pretty harmless from what I know, but they contain language which Nickelodeon didn't associate it with the bigger franchises, the Ninja Turtles. So that's the reason he was let go, and they brought Dominic for the rest of the season. While they were searching for a permanent replacement, starting with season 3, which we'll get to in season 3.
Oh,
but
okay.
But Dominic Cutterbone, for all it's worth, for the small of a role he had in this show, he did a pretty good job mimicking Jason Biggs' voice.
Yeah, like it was definitely it wasn't exact, right? You could tell the
Like
difference.
you could tell at different points, but there are actually people who didn't know about it until they checked it.
I noticed because it just to me it came off as a somewhat deeper voice than what Leonardo originally had, so that's how I noticed. But like, yeah, overall he does a good job. He does a really good job.
Yeah,
And like,
so
to be
for
clear, in Pizza Face, I didn't notice that that was him. Like, I only realized that now when you mentioned it. Like Pizza Face, I didn't know that his VA had changed.
okay,
But
so
going into episode
20.
episode 20,
But
that's when
before
I
we do
noticed.
that, yeah. So, but for August purposes, I really like Jason Biggs as Leonardo. It's kind of a shame he had to go, but well, stuff happens. Life is life, and you move on. As I know, I might be a Sonic, but I'm not that petty about what JJ. But okay. With that said, episode 20, The Legend of Kuru Kabuto.
Mm-hmm. So I like this, and I think this is really good. Another really good filler episode. Um, love Zek, the Master Thief. I think he's great.
Anton Zek,
Yeah,
yes.
Anton Zek. And we learn a bit about the past of the Foot Clan in this episode, where, like, Shredder's helmet's actually very iconic for the Foot Clan and has belonged to the Foot Clan for, like, thousands of years, ever since the Foot Clan's been a thing, right? Also, I like that we bring back the Russian general dude who is going to sell Shredder weapons. Like, he comes back, and apparently, like, he's not exactly friends with Shredder, but he's also not exactly enemies with Shredder, since he's apparently sent many people after Shredder's helmet to try and steal it to provide it to his collection. Also, this dude apparently has the Spear of Destiny and Arthur's legendary sword and the Holy Grail and many other things, like, as in a part of his collection, which is really weird. Just like little weird mentions of these legendary items that don't exactly exist, but apparently they do exist. Just a weird thing. But yeah, this is a good filler episode, I think.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I like Zach, and you'll be happy to know he comes back.
Woo! I'm all for that. I'm betting he comes back and gets mutated.
Well, with that said,
I'm sorry, I was muted there for a brief second. I'm betting he comes back and gets mutated though.
I won't say anything regarding this.
I already have my answer.
Well, anyway, but one thing I do hate about this episode is the ending, because it's the Turtles trying to save Karai, and then the episode ends with kind of like them being tricked into getting help, but not really, and it's like, lol, they failed, bye. See you next episode.
Yeah, it was a little bit like, you think someone would have, asked Shredder, like, why does she have a bag over her head? Why don't we see her face? I don't know, it felt like silly that they would fall for that. But I guess it's just kind of like, well, we can't let them get Karai because that ruins the plot of the next episode.
Actually, the next episode does nothing.
Well, I mean, it ruins the plot of a later episode, so we can't let them capture Karai now. We can't let them, get Karai back now, so not a thing we're going to do. Again, it's for the most part, but again, filler, maybe not the greatest of endings.
They could have done it better than like a funny ending. Bye.
Yeah, I guess. Again, it's overall a good episode, but the ending's a bit meh.
Yeah. Well, with that said, episode 21, Plan 10.
I have nothing down in this for my notes because it's kind of, again, it's filler and it's kind of meh, in my opinion. But go ahead.
The one thing that's actually worth knowing is that, Raphael switches bodies with a Krang.
Mm-hmm.
And like I mentioned before, that Nolan North, who voices Krang, also voiced Raphael in the 2007 TMNT movie, the CGI movie. So, yeah, nice reference. Nothing
Krang is in Raphael's body, so Nolan North is technically voicing Raphael.
Yeah.
Reference. I don't know if that's... Sure, I guess.
Considering the
Going
fact
like
they
the
know
7 degrees of
they do
separation
reference
here.
they do reference something from that movie in a later season, so
True.
they probably knew what they were doing.
Oh, sure, I don't disagree with you, but like we're doing, heavily going into like the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon stuff here, that meme. But anyways, but yeah, this is
But
the
we do
episode where I
know.
kind of disliked Casey somewhat because like their joke with this is Casey and April switch minds too, and Casey spends the entire time checking himself out, and it's kind of like, really, we're doing that? Why?
They probably thought it was funny. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not funny. It never has been funny whenever any show has done this, and this is not the only show that's ever done this. Hey, Scooby-Doo live action movie, I remember you.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought about.
Yeah, I did too. They
I
did the
can
joke
look
there
at
as well.
I can look at myself naked.
Yeah, that stupid joke. Again, I get it. It's not that funny, but I get why people do it, I suppose. Meh.
Meh. Moving on.
To... there's definitely... I'm not going to go into it. I guess it's just not worth it. This is kind of a meh episode of overall. It's filler. There's some funny jokes in here with the Krang and with Raph and them kind of switching bodies and everything. And there's definitely some funny stuff here with Raph having to pretend to be a Krang and dealing with the Krang's weird speech thing. Like,
yeah.
There's some fun jokes in here, but there's also some kind of meh jokes in here, and overall it doesn't really go much of anywhere major. We learn a bit about how the Krang are planning an invasion, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's basically it. Which brings us to the next episode. Vengeance is Mine. Love it. Love this episode.
Oh yeah, completely agree. This is a really good episode.
So for one, the Turtles do manage to bring Karai back to the sewers, where she reunites with Splinter and accepts him. Yeah, and she accepts him as her father, and she does kind of learn from Splinter about what did happen to her mother, to Tang Shen, and this leads to her attempting to take Shredder on to get revenge, which ends up with her being mutated into...
Hello, HC.
Oh, yeah.
You
can
cut
you hear
out.
Me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You stopped early there. Your mic cut out real quick. But yeah, she's mutated into a snake.
Yes.
Which was Shredder's plan to turn the Turtles into a snake to ruin and hopefully destroy Splinter's spirit. Something to point out, like I like how she escapes and Shredder says, that's all a part of my plan. I expect her to come back. Like he knew she would come back, right? She knew after learning and being with Splinter, she would come back. I like that, because he raised her.
He did raise her, and he raised her on the concept of revenge. He raised her on the concept of getting revenge on her mother.
And getting revenge for her mother, not on her mother.
There's
a difference.
Basically, he raised her to avenge her.
Yeah.
And he knew that once she knew the truth, she would come back to do the same thing, only now the right person.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I like that, though. It's good that they acknowledge that, I think, and I liked how they did that. Also, I have it written down here that there's some really good moments, I think. A really good moment here between Shredder and Karai as well, and just kind of seeing them come together again and have that just kind of like finally sit down and talk moment, and kind of Shredder and doling out that wisdom and Karai being against it. Like, again, there's some good family moments here, for Shredder.
Yeah, there's actually another thing I like about this. Well,
I said Shredder. Splinter is who I was talking about. God.
Yes, okay.
I messed that one up bad. Yeah. There's also some good moments for Karai and Shredder here too, but I was specifically meant to refer to Splinter. Bleh.
But this is another thing I like. When Karai does live for a bit with Splinter and the Turtles, and she takes part in training.
That's what I was referring to.
Yeah, but I do like that. She does get to have fun with it, and she does ask Splinter, like, "Is this how training usually goes?" Because the Turtles do goof around a few times, and it's fun.
Yeah.
It's good. I'm actually happy.
It's a good, nice moment.
yeah, that she got a bit of happiness before all the shit happened.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, like we said earlier, Karai ends up falling into, like Shredder captures Karai again after she comes back to try and kill him. He sets up a trap using her to lure the turtles and Splinter into it to try and mutate the turtles. But unfortunately, it's Karai who ends up getting mutated and turned into a snake.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing so,
this
we
is
actually
this is something.
see Shredder is
Yeah, this is
horribly broken
what
up
I
by
was
it.
talking about.
Like it
Yeah, this is
affects him
what
majorly.
yeah, that he does refer to Korea as my daughter. No, and he does blame Splinter for this.
Yeah.
He does,
Even though it's
and
not
it's
at all
kind of
Splinter's fault because it was
yeah,
Shredder's fault, but
it's kind of psychotic when you think about this. That he sees Splinter as the one to blame for this.
yeah. Well, I think it kind of goes back to like Splinter's the one who ruined his life, and as far as he's concerned, right? Like that is, Hamato Yoshi is the one who ruined his life and made everything worse for him. So he's so stuck in this idea of revenge that whatever bad happens to him, it has to be the fault of Splinter, of Hamato Yoshi. It has to be his fault. He's the one at fault for all of it. His life would be so much better without him. I like that. I like how they continue to go on with that. Like, even though this was in large part Shredder's fault because he's the one who cuts the line holding Karai's, cage up that she's trapped in. Like, even though he's the one who cuts that, even by accident, like it's his fault, right? But he still blames Splinter. He still blames the turtles and Hamato Yoshi. Like, I like that. That's good. This is well done.
Mm-hmm.
And then we see at the end of this that, Karai runs away, but she can still technically turn into her human form, I guess.
Yeah, she does have some. She has some sort of control.
Yeah, she has, like, she's not completely, like, she still has some of her humanity left in some way.
Mm-hmm.
We can see that
yes.
because she does recognize Splinter by the very end of it, but she still chooses to run away and go and get away out of the burning building that's crumbling down around them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the end of it.
Yeah, that's the end of it. A great episode. By the way, one moment I want to point out before Karai, heads out to take on Shredder, she has this little moment with Leo, which I was like, please don't Sonic 06 this. Please don't Sonic 06 this. Thankfully they didn't, but for a second I was like, oh shit.
They already have, though, because April's already kissed Donnie.
Well, on the cheek, not... there was no tongue-on-tongue or a corpse for
Fair.
if we want to go. But I did like Leo's expression throughout this. It's like, what are you doing? What's going on?
Fair.
Okay. Moving on to a Chinatown ghost story. The only thing I want to mention here is Hu Chan, who is voiced by James Hong, who people may know being the Kung Fu Panda movies and show.
Noticed that voice very quickly.
Yeah.
Hard to miss that one, but I think this is a good little side story filler thing. Kind of comes in at a weird moment maybe, but it does kind of bring us back to that, hey, the turtles do have that kind of ninjutsu and Japanese mysticism going on with martial arts there. So this is the episode that has that. So we kind of have our, kung fu fighters who can use the power of lightning and thunder and wind, and we're referencing Mortal Kombat now, it feels like, somewhat.
Yeah, probably.
Especially with those hat designs. Like, that definitely feels like, are you referencing Raiden here? Because it feels like you're referencing Raiden or Raiden, however you want to pronounce it. It feels like you're referencing him. Just saying. If it is, fine. If it's not, fine also, I guess. But it feels like it's a reference to that somewhat.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't have much to say about this.
Yeah, it's kind of like, we have Irma gets captured, April gets captured by Ho Chin, and the Purple Dragons get, superpowers for a brief bit. Then those superpowers are then given to, 3 of the turtles, and it leaves, I think, Donatello and Casey have to work together and get over their differences because they're having, their spat over who wants to be with April and all that nonsense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's kind of like that's the episode. Those two have to work together and get over their differences, and we're doing the whole, mysticism thing with, magical powers and
Yeah,
That's it.
because
And
obviously,
April's
yeah.
apparently important to Ho Chin because that's how he gets, his physical form back. And Irma has something unique about her. That's where you learn, like, Irma has a unique thing about her apparently as well, but you're not really led into what it is. But apparently there's something unique about her. You learn later in the season what that unique thing is very quickly. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's just kind of more filler. Nothing too bad. It works for what it is.
Well, moving on
Yeah, moving
to
on.
into Dimension X,
Our
another
first
episode
look.
I really,
Yeah, I like this one.
yeah,
Our first final, or finally our first real, journey to Dimension X and real look at Dimension X.
yeah. Well, we learn from Leatherhead that
That starts off with a really
the
bad fourth
mutagen.
wall joke
Hmm.
of we're watching a TV show inside of a TV show inside of a TV show, and it's like, okay, we get it. You're making a fourth wall joke. Move on.
Hmm.
It
But
it's yeah.
but yeah, I do like this Dimension X looks, and I like how
Mm-hmm.
they also had the thing that time works a bit differently there
Mm-hmm.
because Michelangelo goes in first, and when the other turtles join, it's it's apparently been like months for him, and he already
Mm-hmm.
mastered this dimension.
I like the map guys.
Hmm.
There's a thing in this dimension where it goes map. That's it.
Yeah.
And it's apparently just this giant. It's apparently supposed to be this cute thing where Leo goes up to it like, "Hey, that thing's cute. It's nice. It won't kill us." And it's just over there going map, and Leo goes map back to it, and eventually it turns into this giant thing of it's going to kill and eat you now. And Mikey comes to the rescue at that point. I liked that. That was a good joke. I liked that joke. I don't
Yeah.
know why, but I just enjoyed that. It was fun. But yeah, like the
Well,
whole plot line of this particular episode is like, hey, they get a message from Leatherhead. He's back in Dimension X. Things are going on. Plan 10 still continuing. The invasion is, well, not Plan 10, but the invasion is getting ramped up, and he tries to contact them to get them to come back, to get them to come and help him. They do. And apparently, like, we find that Leatherhead's extremely old now because it's been,
yeah.
years for him, right? Like, he's been in Dimension X
Mhm.
for like
Yeah,
tens
he's been there
tens of
for
years now,
years.
like, for a long time. Like, he's aged a lot, and I like that.
Yes.
It's a neat thing of how time changes, right? Like, and how time isn't the same in Dimension X compared to the Earth.
Mhm.
It's a neat little thing. But yeah, like, this is, I think, a really good Mike. Like, this is a good Mikey episode, right? Like,
Yeah.
this is like
Great even.
him excelling, him doing
Mhm.
really well, and him kind of being the leader and saying like, hey, you guys need to listen to me because I get how this stuff works in this world.
Yes.
So, good episode.
Fantastic.
Very good
Fantastic for
episode.
him. And then we move on to the finale of season two,
Our
The
two-parter.
Invasion.
Yes.
Yeah, to part The Invasion, which, by the way, IGN, not that I like them or anything, gave this episode a 10 out of 10.
Hmm. I think I would say, yeah, it deserves that. Like, we have the whole thing with Irma revealed in this episode where, she is technically an important character because she is Krang subprime, who, if I'm not mistaken, is voiced by the voice of Iago, whose name I can't remember, right?
It's Gilbert Gottfried,
Yeah, it's
yes.
Gilbert Gottfried. That wasn't weird at all hearing his voice. It's like, like, Gilbert Gottfried's done voices for the Krang before, has he? Has he not, or no? I feel like he
Hmm?
has.
What did you ask again? I was.
Like, that Gilbert Gottfried has voiced, like, the Krang in the past or something, maybe?
No.
No?
No,
Okay.
no, no. It's for this show, he's the voice of.
To be fair, I thought he had, but also, like, the Krang, the voice they chose for the Krang in this show kind of put me in the mind of Gilbert Gottfried a bit. And I was
Well,
wondering when.
you also need to the original Frank was like this,
Yeah.
so
I was wondering when they would involve Gilbert Gottfried at some point with the Krang because it felt like he would fit very well.
Well, there you go.
Yes, so there I go. Armabot, not creepy at all, by the way.
Yeah, that was creepy.
Yeah.
Like, but okay, that's a thing. That's a thing now. By the way, one thing I will say about this is that the last three episodes we talked about, like starting with episode 23, all of these episodes aired after the terrible Michael Bay.
Oof.
Okay, this was like a month. This was like a month after, because the episode with Karai aired at the end of June, and then we didn't get new episodes until September because they wanted to let the movie run its course. So, and I'm watching this episode and this finale, and I'm like, end the origin story, change a few things, and this is what the movie should have been.
Mm-hmm. Could have been, anyways.
No, should have been like at the episode, at the origin story. Maybe flesh a few more things out because you don't have the backstory of all the episodes, and make this the movie.
Yeah.
Make this the movie. I was so pissed off. Like, I love this finale, but at the same time, I'm like, why couldn't the actual movie be like this?
Fair.
Bitch of a film. I hate this movie, but this.
Completely fair.
Okay.
But I like this two-parter because a lot of things that we've seen in the past come back in this two-parter, right? Like,
yeah,
have...
it also kind of subverts our expectations. I didn't know I wanted a Leatherhead Shredder. I got it, and I'm not complaining.
Yeah, that was awesome. A good fight because Leatherhead comes in, saves Splinter, because Splinter's searching for all right, so. We have Irma coming in, being led to the lair. She turns into Irmabot, who is controlled by Krang Subprime, and Splinter, tells the turtles, "Hey, leave, the lair. I'll distract the rest of the Krang. You guys get out."
And even so, the turtles do split because Donnie, Raph, and Mikey are with April, and Leo is on his own, and he has an army of foot soldiers coming after him.
Yeah,
and he takes them all down. This again, you want to know why I do credit Leo this moment. This is a great fight for Leo.
Yes, this is a great entire thing for Leo. And I love how before we get into that, you have Leo and Donnie kind of fighting back and forth of we should get out, we should make another base outside of the city somewhere else, another lair just in case something goes wrong, something does happen. And Donnie fights him on that, saying, "No, we can stay here. We don't have to leave. We can rely on my turtle mech. That'll get us through everything." And, I like how all of this does come into play, right? Because, we have Donnie, Mikey, Raph, Casey, and April get split from Leonardo. He has to be on his own. Then Mikey and Raph get split from Donnie, Casey, and April, right? And Donnie, Casey, and April end up going to April's father's house and staying there and lying low while Mikey and Raph are up top kind of dealing with Krang Prime and the rest of the Krang.
Actually, this is something that Raph is track down Karai, and they watch the invasion as it.
That is right. Mikey and Raph are trying to track down Karai. That is right. That's why they're separate.
Casey, not Mikey.
Yes, Casey. Sorry, I'll get it right eventually.
but again, and another thing. But the thing that surprises me most about this episode is that, the plot twist is that the Krang succeed. The Krang win.
Well, yeah, that's the big, I guess you'd say the plot twist is we end this season off with our heroes, I guess as a reference to, isn't one of the live action 90s movies, they have to leave New York?
This is something that it happens in the comic, and it does happen in the first 90 movie as well, where they're beaten and they have to leave New York for a bit because one of the turtles got injured in the comics, and in this show it's Leo. In the movie it was Raphael, but it does reference that. And
well, nothing wrong with that. I think it's handled really well here.
Not at all. Kudos for doing an adaptation like this, because outside of the first movie we haven't seen any other takes about this.
But it's nice to kind of see them lose, because they have, even though it has felt most of the times they win, it hasn't felt like they've truly won for many of them, because we always kind of get this reference of maybe the enemy's not dead and they'll be back, quote unquote, right? But this one, it's it's genuinely
lost. Another moment that's very hard is that Raph and Mikey see and able to see Shredder throw Splinter into the sewers unconscious, and you can see Raph losing it, and
Yeah,
Michelangelo managing to calm him down.
with a hug. Yes,
Great moment.
that was a really good moment. But going back to Leo's fight, loved that. Loved kind of seeing Leo consistently trying to get Splinter and the others to come down there and fight him, or Shredder and the others. I'm gonna keep getting them mixed up, I know, but Shredder and Tiger Claw and Bradford and Fishface, like all standing up on the rooftop, kind of watching him fight all of the different Foot Clan robots and everything. And Leonardo consistently telling him, "Come down here and fight me. Quit hiding behind it." And Shredder just telling him, "You're not worth it. You're not worth my time. You're not good enough." I liked that. That was really good of seeing him consistently do so well against the Footbots, right? But Shredder still thinks he's not worth facing. Like, that was good. That was a really good moment. And then seeing Splinter trying to track Leonardo and kind of seeing these different bits of like his weapons left behind as he's been fighting the different Krang and the Footbots and everything. And eventually Splinter comes to find Shredder and they start fighting. And like you said, seeing Leatherhead and Shredder fight, and Leatherhead actually make a decent dent in Shredder there for a bit, but Shredder still ends up beating him and throwing him into the sewers as well, right? Like, all of this is really well done. Yep. And seeing Leatherhead and Splinter have to work together for a bit, like, it's really well done. It's really good.
And this,
by the way,
but one thing I have
go ahead.
Mentioned, the Total Mech. The Total Mech is awesome.
Also, I want to mention, like, I like the fact that we finally see a military thing going on. Like, the Krang are invading, and we see the Earth Protection Force come in and try and stop the Krang as well. It's like, this is good. I want more of this, because, well, I mean, no, but we had the Technodrome thing before, and it's like, it's just all of New York. We just see the citizens running away, but we don't see anything happening to the Technodrome from a kind of, like, hey, where's the world response, right? Like, where's the world's action here, right? Like, we see the Turtles' action, but where's the world's response to what's happening and what's going on? I like that Season 2 actively does try to remedy that and fix that and says, hey, here's the world's response. Here's the world kind of acting and doing their thing as well, right? I like that, personally. Like, that's what I like to see and enjoy more of, because it makes the world feel more lived in. It makes the world feel more alive. It's not just the Turtles interacting and the world having to deal with whatever the Turtles are doing and what's coming from that. It's the world interacting from what the Turtles are doing and what's coming from that, as well as seeing how the Turtles are reacting and what they're doing too. It's a very quick thing, but I love the nod. Also, of course, Mr. Kirby gets mutated a second time.
Yeah, that felt like time we need to get the...
We need to get rid of this character. How are we going to do that?
Yeah.
Here's how. I mean...
Well, but...
meh.
But, so, yeah, the Turtles case kind of lose. They lose.
Yes.
And they run away from the O'Neill farmhouse, which we will get to when we cover Season 3. But the last thing we end up is Karai as a snake saving Splinter from the sewer water, and that's the last thing for this season.
Love the music during the Turtle Mech fight with Krang Prime. Really good music there. Like, this season had a lot of, like, that I really started to notice good soundtrack choices for, like, some of the fights and some of the stuff going on. Like, really good soundtrack stuff here. Like, really good music work done for this entire season, in my opinion. And Ice Cream Kitty comes with us. Ice Cream Kitty is best kitty. Good.
Yeah, Ice Cream Kitty.
We can't forget Ice Cream Kitty. Mikey doesn't forget Ice Cream Kitty. Ice Cream Kitty gets brought with us. This is a good thing. I better see more Ice Cream Kitty in Season 3. If not, I would be disappointed.
You will. He does show up.
Good. This is a good thing. Also, a small last little nod. Pizza Delivery Kid rescuing the little girl. Like, go Pizza Delivery Kid. Being a hero. He runs away later, but he was a hero.
Well, you can't win it all. You can win it all, but
he tries. Bless him. Pizza Delivery Kid. Yeah. Go you.
Indeed.
Yeah, but that's the end of our season. We start off with, Season 2 ends with our heroes losing, and I'm guessing Season 3 will be starting off with kind of the conclusion to that and where we go from there, which is really neat to see.
But we'll get to Season 3.
Oh, go ahead.
I'll let you finish.
No,
but I was just to season 3 once you finish season 3.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was going to say I'm definitely more interested going into season 3 than I was season 2, to be honest, right? Like season 1's ending going into season 2, I wasn't really all that interested. I wasn't really all that kind of, I'd say, excited for it. This season definitely drew me in a bit more. I still don't think I'm sold on TMNT yet completely, but the ending for season 2 definitely helps a lot with that. A lot of the good episodes we've had with Karai and Slash and many others helped a lot with that, of getting me more interested. And I'm very interested going into season 3 and seeing how we resolve the Krang invasion, and how the turtles get back, and how we kind of get back to the turtles being on top again and all of that, right? Like, I'm very interested going from season 2 to season 3 and seeing where season 3 goes.
Yeah.
Very,
Well,
very interested.
you get to it. I'll just wait until you finish so that we can talk about season 3.
Sure.
Because there's a lot to say about it, if you ask me.
From the ending of season 2 I would completely agree. There's a lot to talk about potentially.
So with that said, that's been all for this episode of the Outcast. Enjoyed. What do you think about season 2 of TMNT? You can tell us all about it in the section below on our, which is Berkcast team, on our Twitter, which is Berkcast with a capital C.
Yeah, one of these days you'll get the outro out without it breaking up somewhat. Finish though.
Whatever. Everything is in the description. With that said, I was HC.
I've been Wolf.
And we will talk to you all next time. Take care and booyakasha.
That part obviously doesn't break up. Ugh. Till next time, take care. Bye-bye.